Chapter 3266. Oh, could it be that even with young Master Zhu here, you can't make an exception? Xiao Hua originally had one foot on the boat, but stopped when he heard this. Zhu Qing nodded. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. Although I am in charge of Zhaixing Lu, I still have to abide by Zhaixing Lu's rules. Moreover, I don't believe that this little friend doesn't have enough primeval stones. Good, Xiao Hua clapped his hands. I like this answer the most. Then Xiao Hua turned his head and said, go to the boat on the side. The things in the small Qinquan bag are enough for you to participate in the auction. Yes, this junior understands. Xiao Jian was even more observant than Xiao Hua. Since he heard Zhu Qing call him little friend, how could he not know Zhu Qing's cultivation level? He obediently replied and went to the boat on the side. When Xiao Hua stepped on the boat, Zhu Qing didn't move the boat. Instead, he said seriously, fellow immortal Xiao, please take out the primeval stones you prepared to participate in the auction. If it doesn't reach the amount my Zhaixing Lu has, I still can't send fellow immortal to Bright Moon Palace. Doesn't young Master Zhu have something to do? Can you tell me first? Xiao Hua smiled. Clearly, Zhu Qing didn't come here for the pile of magic tools. Xiao Hua's heart was at ease. Unfortunately, Zhu Qing glanced at the distant rainbow bridge and shook his head. Fellow immortal Xiao doesn't need to hide anything. What I want to say can't be said in a few sentences. If fellow immortal Xiao doesn't want to delay the auction, let me take a look at the primeval stones first. In addition, I don't know if it's fellow immortal Zhao's first time participating in my Zhaixing Lu's auction, so I want to remind you that the more primeval stones you have, the higher the grade you can bid. Since Zhu Qing didn't know about the magic tools, Xiao Hua wouldn't take out the VIP token. After hearing Zhu Qing's words, he thought for a moment and understood Zhu Qing's meaning. The amount of primeval stones was like a guarantee. With enough primeval stones, Zhaixing Lu wouldn't be afraid that you won't pay after bidding. Thus, Xiao Hua took out a small Qinquan pouch from his bosom and handed it to Zhu Qing, saying, how about young Master Zhu take a look at these? Oh, Zhu Qing's expression didn't change as she glanced at the supreme-grade origin stones and a large pile of spirit herbs in the small Qinquan bag. She flipped her hand and took out a golden token with 3 stars engraved on it. She handed it over to Xiao Hua along with the small Qinquan bag and said, fellow immortal Xiao, please keep it well. With this 3 stars token, fellow immortal can bid for anything in the Bright Moon Palace. Yes. Xiao Hua's face was also calm. He took the small Qinquan bag and the token and asked indifferently, now, young Master Zhu, you can tell me why you're looking for me. Yes, in this short period of time, Xiao Hua had thought of many possibilities, but none of them were possible. Xiao Hua didn't think that the so-called Zhaixing Lu would be able to discover anything wrong with him after he had appeared in Yuzhou for so many days. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please wait a moment. Zhu Qing wasn't in a hurry. She waved her hand and took out another star token from her sleeve. She opened her mouth, and a strand of true qi similar to the stardust rushed out of her mouth and landed on the star token. Shua, the star token emitted a brilliant yet not dazzling brilliance and then landed on the boat. Buzz, buzz. The boat shook slightly and also emitted a dazzling brilliance. Like a meteor, it rushed towards the rainbow bridge in the distance. Although the boat's speed was fast, the rainbow bridge seemed to be very far away. Although it looked very close in Xiao Hua's eyes, the distance didn't shrink at all in a few breaths. Fellow immortal Xiao, do you like the star chart of my Zhaixing Lu? Zhu Qing asked with a smile. Yes, I do like it. Xiao Hua nodded. My Dao sect has always emphasized the heavenly Dao. My Dao sect's cultivators also pursue the heavenly Dao. This starry sky contains the mysteries of the heavenly Dao. How could I not like this starry sky that contains my Dao sect's highest principles? My Dao sect pursues the heavenly Dao and wants to roam the heavens with my own body. Confucian cultivators also pursue the heavenly Dao. However, they believe that the heavenly Dao is the human Dao. Experiencing the world of mortals can naturally temper the heavenly Tao in their hearts. The heavenly Tao is either Tao, law, or truth. Zhu Qing continued, what I am curious about is, fellow immortal Xiao is such an outstanding person. You should be a bright star in the night sky now that the Tao sect has declined. Why is it that my Zhai Xing Lu doesn't have any records of you? He, young Master Zhu. Xiao Hua smiled faintly. Zhai Xing Lu does have some strength. But do you think your Zhai Xing Lu can record all the heroes of the hidden immortal continent? What about the cultivators far away in the Western Paradise, the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, and even the Four Seas? Zhu Qing wasn't angry. He continued to speak slowly. Fellow immortal, Xiao actually still doesn't understand what my Zhai Xing Lu represents. Forget it, you will know in the future. Furthermore, you haven't been recorded in my Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes. In the future, as you appear in my Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes, you will definitely write a thick stroke in my Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes. Is Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes very thick? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. Zhu Qing was slightly taken aback. Somewhat puzzled, he said, my Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes isn't a book of Confucian cultivators. Ha! Xiao Hua laughed loudly. I'm afraid your Book of Heroes won't be able to contain my scribbles. Ha! Fellow immortal Xiao, please don't worry. If one Book of Heroes isn't enough, my Zhai Xing Lu still has a second one. It will continue until fellow immortal Zhao's deeds are fully recorded. Then I'll have to trouble you. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I'll have to trouble young Master Zhu to start from today. Of course. Zhu Qing was also happy to hear this. Fellow immortal Zhao's name has already been recorded in Zhai Xing Lu's Book of Heroes. Oh, Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and suddenly said indifferently, if young Master Zhu was an individual cultivator, this Xiao wouldn't mind boasting and chatting with young Master Zhu here. However, young Master Zhu is so serious about driving away this Zhao's junior. It can't be that you want to talk about your dreams and future with this Xiao under the romantic starlight, right? If that's the case, I suggest you change to a prettier female cultivator. Zhu Qing's face was really full of excitement. He looked up and down at Xiao Hua's Taoist robe, rubbed his nose, and sighed. Alas, I seem to be getting old. With fellow Taoist Xiao, there's really no way to talk about romance. Forget it, fellow immortal Xiao. Have you heard of Star Moon Union? Or perhaps you've seen these 3 words somewhere. Although Zhu Qing spoke casually, his gaze was looking at Xiao Hua's face. He looked very solemn and cautious. When Xiao Hua heard this, he immediately understood the reason why Zhu Qing was looking for him. Xiao Hua raised his head to look at the nearing rainbow bridge and said with a smile, Confucian cultivators often say that one shouldn't look at indecent things. Why just energize Xing Lu? I only took a few glances, and you were actually peeping at me from the side. Young Master Zhu, what should I say about you? I don't care what you say, Zhu Qing said word by word. I just want to know if you saw these 3 words or not. I also want to know if it's worth it for me to postpone this auction for 2 hours. Oh, you. Xiao Hua didn't expect that the auction would be postponed for 2 hours because of him. Presumably, even Zhu Qing himself couldn't decide, so he must have reported to the so-called Star Moon Union within these 2 hours. Therefore, Xiao Hua said word by word, I think young Master Zhu found the wrong person. I didn't see the 3 words Star Moon Union on the screen. I only saw the 2 words Star Moon and a big hand. Good. Zhu Qing clapped his hands and said, fellow immortal Xiao is indeed a fated person. Stop. Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him. I didn't see the 3 words Star Moon Union. Why do you say we are fated? There is no Star Moon Union in this world. Zhu Qing sneered. It's just that some people call Star Moon Union Star Moon Union. There are even some bored people who like to call Star Moon Union Star Moon Business Union. In this world, how many true allies are there? A business union driven by profit is nothing but a joke. Oh, I understand, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Star Moon, it's really interesting. Zhu Qing said curiously, fellow immortal Xiao, when you heard Star Moon, you didn't think of other places? Other places? Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. I didn't think of anything else. Ha! Zhu Qing couldn't help but laugh. Fellow immortal Xiao, it's a good thing that I'm a man. If it was a female cultivator of my star-picking tower, TSK, with your tongue, I would have given myself to you. Tisk, Xiao Hua said righteously. Don't come near me. I still have a bottom line of morality. Ha ha. Zhu Qing couldn't help but laugh until he bent over. I regret meeting fellow immortal Xiao too late. Too late? Star-Picking Towers Hero Book has only just started recording. All right, Zhu Qing laughed for a moment and said, since fellow immortal Xiao didn't mention that place, you must have a plan. Then I won't hide anything. That's right, Star Moon. Naturally came from Star Moon Palace. Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua's eyes really showed a trace of surprise. Zhu Qing saw that Xiao Hua's doubt wasn't fake and was stunned. He asked curiously, could it be that fellow immortal Xiao doesn't know about Star Moon Palace? Do I have to know? Xiao Hua rubbed his nose. Fellow immortal Xiao should know, but since it's like this, I think you really don't know. Zhu Qing replied with some surprise. I never thought that fellow immortal Xiao wouldn't know about Star Moon Palace. This is a bit troublesome. Zhu Qing looked at the approaching Rainbow Bridge and said hurriedly, how about this? I won't say much about where Star Moon Palace is. Fellow immortal Xiao only needs to find any cultivator of 3rd or 4th grade of essence power. They can explain it in detail. Even my Star-Picking Towers Fantastic Stories has a brief explanation. Fellow immortal Xiao only needs to know that it's an ancient ruin. Damn it, Xiao Hua shook his head and said hurriedly, young Master Zhu, for this kind of interesting adventure, it's better to choose a few beautiful female cultivators to go with us. I'm an outsider, so I think we should just forget about it. Why don't you look at other people? Chapter 3267. It was no wonder that Xiao Hua refused. Once he arrived in the 3 continents, he had accepted the invitations of Venerable Jing Chun from the Great Snow Mountain, Chu Muhuan from the Jingzhou Chu family, and Xue Ping from the Left General of the Nanpu Prefecture. Although the first 2 had fallen, Xiao Hua did not feel relaxed. Not only did he have to go to the Golden Mountain Temple in the Western Paradise, he also felt that he had to give an explanation to the Jingzhou Chu family. If all of this could be accomplished easily, Xiao Hua would not be stingy with his strength and luck. He could follow Sir Zhu of Jiaxing Lu to the Star Moon Palace. However, if even the imposing Jiaxing Lu was so serious about this matter, then the dangers of the Star Moon Palace were obvious. Furthermore, his Dao Sect cultivation had not even recovered 10% of his supernatural powers. How could he go there? Therefore, Xiao Hua felt a headache coming on when he heard this. Without waiting for Zhu Qing to say more, his first reaction was to refuse. When Zhu Qing saw that the expression on Xiao Hua's face was not the shock and joy that he had expected, but instead one of impatience, he was stunned as well. Soon after, he smiled bitterly and said, fellow immortal Xiao, you are the first cultivator that I've ever seen or heard of who doesn't want to go to Star Moon Palace. This really makes me depressed. That 2 hours. I have worked for nothing. Ha! Xiao Hua smiled. He could not bear it, and said, my cultivation is shallow. I dare not risk my life to laugh proudly in the mortal world. I am so sorry. After thinking for a while, Zhu Qing smiled and said, how about this? I will not force you to do anything. How about we just briefly talk about the Star Moon Palace? Xiao Hua knew that this was Zhu Qing's delaying tactic. Zhu Qing wanted to say something that would move his heart, but he was originally a soft-hearted person. Thinking about how Zhu Qing had helped him out of his predicament a moment ago, and then delayed the auction for him for an hour, he could only nod his head and say, young Master Zhu, please speak. It is said that the Star Moon Palace was passed down from ancient times. It contains the secrets of the stars and the moon. Cultivators who are fated to know about the Star Moon Palace, whether they are Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, Taoist cultivators, demons, or even the ancient dragon clan, all covet the Star Moon Palace. According to ancient legends, the Star Moon Palace is a relic left behind by the upper realm in the 3 continents. There are also legends that say that the Star Moon Palace was established by the great divine ability of an ancient god. At this point, Zhu Qing took a deep look at Xiao Hua and continued. Legend has it that the Tao sect fought with the Buddhist sect and Confucian cultivators for the Star Moon Palace. That was why the two sects joined forces and annihilated them. In short, this Star Moon Palace is a mysterious place. It is also a place of luck. Whoever can enter will be able to obtain a fortuitous encounter. Xiao Hua's expression was calm as he nodded lightly. Yes, it doesn't matter if fellow immortal Xiao believes it or not. According to the records of our Star and Moon Palace, among the few who entered the Star and Moon Palace, there were indeed quite a number of people who were fated to reach the heavens and became arrogant characters in the three continents. Zhu Qing did not try to persuade him and only explained. Xiao Hua frowned. What? How many times has Star Moon organized such operations? It's like this. Zhu Qing nodded. My cultivation is not good enough, so I have not participated in these operations. Moreover, the appearance of the Star and Moon Palace does not have any pattern. Even a location is ever-changing. Even if I invite fellow immortal Xiao Hua now, I don't know when I can honor it. Of course, if fellow immortal Xiao Hua accepts the Star and Moon token and does not intend to go, Star Moon will not force you. Haha. Then is the screen in front of your star picking tower used to select the candidates to enter the Star and Moon Palace. Xiao Hua did not continue the conversation, but chuckled and continued to ask. Of course, the operations of our Bright Moon organization have all been carefully planned, and we have made many preparations beforehand. Compared to those aristocratic families and sects, we are worlds apart. Many cultivators who know the inside story want to follow our Star and Moon's operations. Our Star and Moon naturally have to carefully select the candidates. Zhu Qing said proudly. This screen is one of the checkpoints of the selection. Only cultivators who have divine consciousness, primordial thought, divine eyes, or Buddhist consciousness that have a unique perception of the moon and the stars can enter the Star and Moon Palace and gain the favor of the Star and Moon Palace. All right, Xiao Hua was speechless and expressed a kind of surrender. What specific benefits can one get from entering the Star and Moon Palace? That's hard to say, seeing that Xiao Hua had relented. Zhu Qing was somewhat happy, but he still shrugged and said helplessly, everyone's opportunities are different. There are Confucian cultivators who cultivate the heart of heaven and become literary stars. There are also demon kings who cultivate the heart of heaven and become great saints. Of course, there are also Taoist seniors who break through the void and ascend. Oh, really? Xiao Hua was a little shocked. This Star and Moon Palace is too powerful? It's fake, Zhu Qing said resolutely. These are all legends. There are only a few words in the records of our Star and Moon, but these cannot be taken seriously. It's true that only you can enter. Just like this rainbow bridge, if you want to participate in the auction in the Bright Moon Palace, you can't just listen to others. Only when you participate will you know the grand occasion inside. When Zhu Qing said this, the boat had already reached the rainbow bridge. Zhu Qing looked at the tricolored rainbow bridge in front of him, then looked at Xiao Hua as he spoke. Xiao Hua sighed. Actually, this Xiao should have closed his ears long ago and not listened to Sir Zhu's advice. Sir Zhu's words have still moved this Xiao. Whether you are moved or not is fellow immortal Zhao's own matter. It has nothing to do with this Zhu. Forget it. The Bright Moon Palace doesn't seem to force others to participate, right? Xiao Hua asked tentatively. Even if the Xiao doesn't go, it's fine, right? Yes, that's for sure. Zhu Qing nodded. Because I don't believe that anyone can resist the temptation of the Star and Moon Palace. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand. I hope this Xiao is the first person who can resist the temptation. Maybe. Zhu Qing answered with a smile, then looked at Xiao Hua's outstretched hand and asked curiously, Fellow immortal Xiao, why are you doing this? Don't you have any token? Naturally, there's no need for that. Zhu Qing waved his hand. When the Star and Moon Palace descends, all three continents will know. When the time comes, fellow immortal Xiao can go to any star-picking tower and just report your name. Naturally, There will be people specially assigned to arrange everything for you. That's strange. Xiao Hua slapped his forehead. Then your star and moon palace. What benefits do you get? Hee, this one doesn't know. This one is only responsible for finding and selecting fellow immortal Xiao, who is qualified to enter the star and moon palace. Zhu Qing smiled lightly and raised his hand. Fellow immortal Xiao, the boat has reached the shore. Fellow immortal Xiao only needs to step onto the rainbow bridge, and the star-picking tower's disciples will naturally receive Bright Moon Palace. Many thanks, Lord Zhu. Xiao Hua shook his Taoist robe and stepped onto the boat. Could it be that Lord Zhu doesn't want to go in with this one? Our guest has arrived. Our star-picking tower has its own way of entertaining guests. As for the host, he naturally has his own path to walk. Zhu Qing stretched out his hand and took out a star-pattern mask from his sleeve and handed it to Xiao Hua. Once you enter the marquee gate, you will be a passerby from now on. This one doesn't dare to travel with fellow immortal Xiao. Haha, passerby Zhu, goodbye. Xiao Hua didn't put it on. He put his hand behind his back and stepped onto the rainbow bridge, his body and mind following the rainbow bridge as it flew towards the full moon. This Taoist is indeed somewhat interesting. Zhu Qing looked at Xiao Hua's confident and unrestrained back and said with a smile, if he changed into Confucian attire, he would definitely be a romantic youth. Immediately, starlight flashed around Zhu Qing's body and his figure disappeared again. Xiao Hua's figure rose up along with the rainbow bridge. He watched as the bright moon gradually grew bigger, finally transforming into a huge moon hall high up in the sky. The number of cultivators flying towards the moon gate had already decreased. Xiao Hua knew that he had arrived a bit late. He swept his divine sense around and discovered that he had actually been restricted. Immediately, he put the mask in his hand on his face. However, he felt a wave of coolness sweep over his body from top to bottom. A figure that was also covered in stardust appeared in front of the moon gate. This one's Xiao Yi Sr. Xiao Hua's figure had just stopped in front of the moon gate when a woman with a graceful figure walked out from the gate. She placed her hands on her waist and saluted. And this old man has come to participate in the auction. Little girl, lead the way. Xiao Hua opened his mouth and said. Unexpectedly, his voice was also somewhat different. It was impossible to tell that it was Xiao Hua's voice. That woman smiled apologetically and said, Senior, please take out your star token. This one will arrange a place for you to go. Here. Xiao Hua extended his hand and handed over the star token that Zhu Qing gave him. Oh, Senior is a distinguished guest of 3 Dawn. Please follow Xiao Yi. The woman looked at it and carefully returned the star token to Xiao Hua. Okay, Xiao Hua took the star token. Just as he was about to step into the moon gate, he heard another voice not far away. This one, Xiao Yi Senior. Oh? Xiao Hua was slightly startled. He raised his head and looked over. Unexpectedly, there was also another woman walking out from that place. She was bowing and saluting a figure covered in stardust next to him. Senior, please. Xiao Yi seemed to know what Xiao Hua wanted to say. She smiled and said, in this bright moon palace, all the disciples of Zhaixing Lu are called Xiao Yi. Haha, interesting. Xiao Hua smiled. In Star Palace, all the disciples are numbered. In Bright Moon Palace, all the disciples are only given one name. This Zhaixing Lu is really interesting. Xiao Yi didn't reply. She pursed her lips and smiled as she walked into the moon gate. The space inside the moon gate was extremely large. Above their heads were specks of starry sky, and below their feet was solid ground. In the center of the space was an enormous vermilion palace. It was divided into 3 levels. In front of this palace, there was an enormous, perfectly straight osmanthus tree. Senior, please. Xiao Yi raised her hand again. Xiao Hua gave a rough glance and followed Xiao Yi towards the vermilion palace. That palace looked very far away, but after walking for a few dozen steps, they arrived in front of the palace. The palace was simple and unadorned, but its specifications were elegant. Rather than calling it a palace, it was better to call it a large, embroidered building. A kind of indescribable hidden bitterness seeped out from the Vermilion Palace. Even the three words Bright Moon Palace on the door in the middle of the palace exuded endless loneliness. Senior, please take out the star token and place it here. Xiao Yi extended her jade-like index finger and tapped on the door. A furry little white rabbit poked its head out from the door. Xiao Yi used her finger to point at the rabbit's three-petaled mouth and smiled. Chapter 3268. Xiao Hua glanced at it with interest and placed the star tablet in his hand into the rabbit's mouth. Squeak, squeak. The rabbit seemed to be crying out as it retracted its head. Creak. The vermilion door slowly opened, revealing a room of 1 zhang in size. When the rabbit retracted its head, Xiao Hua did not feel any fluctuation of magic power. It seemed to be completely a kind of mechanism technique. Seeing the door open, Xiao Yi bowed again and said, Senior, please. Xiao Hua nodded and walked into the room. He saw that the room was very clean. Other than the door he came in from, there was only a window on the opposite side. Leaning against the window, there was a desk and a chair. On the desk, there were some 4 treasures of the study, a plate of spirit fruits, and a jade plate with a wine pot and a wine cup. Senior, please sit. Xiao Yi walked to the side of the window and invited Xiao Hua to sit. She carefully picked up the wine pot and poured a cup of jade-like spirit wine. She smiled and said, This is my Zhai Xing Lu's Yun E.G. It can be considered a famous wine in hidden immortal continent. Senior, please have a taste. Forget it, Xiao Hua waved his hand. This old man does not like spirit wine. You can have all these spirit wine. This old man will have a taste of these spirit fruits. Many thanks, Senior. Xiao Yi was very happy. Seeing Xiao Hua pick up a spirit fruit to taste, she put away the jade plate. Then, she walked to the front of the window and pushed her hand. The window also opened with a creak, buzz buzz. As the window opened, a burst of abnormal noise rushed in from outside the window. There was even a kind of slightly hot breath that entered. Oh, Xiao Hua was startled. He seemed to have not experienced this kind of noise in the secular world for a long time. Xiao Hua unconsciously stood up and looked outside the window. Xiao Yi looked at Xiao Hua very considerately. Although she could not see Xiao Hua's expression, Xiao Hua's sluggishness when he turned his head immediately aroused her vigilance. She hurriedly said, Senior, if you feel that it is noisy, this servant will ban all the noise. No need. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Since your Zhai Xing Lu has this kind of consideration, there must be someone who likes this kind of noise. This old man will also join in the fun. Yes, Senior. If you feel that it's inappropriate, you can tell me immediately. Xiao Yi was very happy that she had met such a kind senior. She stood at the side with a smile. Xiao Hua walked to the window and stretched his head out to look. He saw that this was a huge space, and at the top of the space, there was a resplendent Milky Way across the sky. The starlight was not flashing in the Milky Way, but it was really like the mischievous eyes of a child, blinking from time to time. In the surroundings of this space, on the opposite side of Xiao Hua, were rings of star veins that rippled like waves. Every place where the star veins dimmed should be a cultivator participating in the auction. This was because every starlight would more or less emit some sort of sound. There are even many places where the starlight lines were connected together, and there were also loud discussions. In the beginning, what Xiao Hua didn't understand was that some of these star patterns were bright while others were dim. Furthermore, there were layers to them. It was as if the starlight around him was already extremely bright. However, in a short moment, Xiao Hua already knew that the brightness of these star patterns should be related to the star veins. The area where the cultivator holding the 1-star veins was located should be a bit dimmer. If the cultivator holding the 3-star veins was like him, then shouldn't it be a bit brighter? Everything was beautiful, and compared to the Star Palace from before, it was even more enjoyable. However, in this misty illusion, there were some bald heads and white beards that were especially eye-catching. Xiao Hua looked for a moment and asked with a smile, "Are these Buddhist cultivators?" Xiao Yi glanced at them and nodded. "These are all monks from the temples near the Bronze Pillar State. There are also those old men wearing Confucian robes. There are also rotten Confucians from the Bronze Pillar state. Oh, they came here to participate in the auction? Why aren't they wearing masks? Xiaohua was a bit surprised because these monks didn't seem to have a high cultivation. Those old men were even panting. They didn't seem like Confucian cultivators at all. He, Xiao Yi laughed. Those monks naturally came to participate in the auction, but they only bid for the Buddhist sect's relics, ignoring all cultivation techniques and Buddhist artifacts, so they don't need to hide anything. As for those rotten Confucians, they are purely here to cause trouble. Since they aren't here to participate in the auction, they don't need to hide their true faces, right? Oh, cause trouble? Xiao Hua asked curiously. They don't even have the strength to truss up a chicken. What kind of trouble can they cause? Senior will know in a while. Xiao, he actually kept him in suspense, pursing her lips and smiling. Senior, take a look. Aside from you and the other seniors holding the 3-star veins who have their own rooms, the others don't have rooms and are sitting together with the others. There are so many people. Even if some of them are unwilling to wear masks, they still wear them for the beautiful scenery of the Bright Moon Palace. But these people are really annoying, adding so many bald white flies to the beautiful scenery of the Milky Way. Cough, cough. Xiaohua coughed and said unhappily. Everyone has their own ideas, and they are also abiding by the rules of Zhaixing Lu. As for whether they wear masks or not, that is their own business. These Buddhist sect's great masters are merciful and have come here to welcome the Buddhist sect's disciples' relics back to the sect. How can you casually insult them? Even these elders, that you may have some thoughts of causing trouble, but they are old enough to be your grandfather. Don't you feel guilty for being so eloquent? When Xiao Yi heard this, her expression changed rapidly. Perhaps she didn't have so many filthy thoughts in her heart, so she followed Xiao Hua's words and even had the intention to curry favor with him. But she didn't expect that she would end up making a fool of herself. With a plop, without waiting for Xiao Hua to say a second word, Xiao Yi knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Senior, it's all Xiao Yi's fault. Please forgive me. Get up. Xiao Hua hurriedly helped Xiao Yi up with a flick of his sleeve and sighed. Don't think too much. This old man doesn't have any other intentions. I just feel that you should have more awareness of respecting your elders. You have no reason to lose your moral integrity in order to curry favor with honored guests. Yes, this servant also didn't want to, but this servant is only a disciple who attends to honored guests. Xiao Yi lowered her head and replied with some hidden bitterness. Don't say any more, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Tell this old man. What is a pedantic scholar? A pedantic scholar is naturally a pedantic Confucian scholar. Xiao Yi blinked her eyes. Although she was very curious, she didn't dare to ask too much. She answered obediently. It's those bookworms. They only know how to read. They are inflexible and ignorant of worldly affairs. So they are called pedantic scholars. Are these white-bearded elders all bookworms? Xiao Huan naturally knew the meaning of being ignorant of worldly affairs, but he didn't expect that these bookworms would have such an elegant name. Xiao Yi's heart became lively again as she said with a smile, Actually, simple bookworms can't be considered pedantic scholars. Sometimes, Zhaixing Lu will also have some bookworm scholars. They are quite cute, but most of them don't know worldly affairs. That's why they are ignorant of worldly affairs. On the other hand, these old, pedantic scholars are really pedantic. They only know how to use the dogmas in the books to apply to people. They're simply stuck to the rules. Look, this is not good. That is also not good. They also say that our Zhaixing Lu's female disciples should kneel and serve them. They also say that women without talent are virtuous. Zhaixing Lu shouldn't have female disciples at all. Other than marrying and having children, women have no other merits. Haha, this old man understands, Xiao Hua laughed, finally understanding why Xiao Yi was so disdainful of these so-called pedantic scholars. This old man has wronged you just now. This person's words are indeed very annoying. That's right. Xiao Yi also beamed with joy. Looking at your appearance, you are not a pedantic scholar. Sweat, this old man wants to be a pedantic scholar. Xiao Hua said with a smile, It's a pity that this old man hasn't read a lot of poetry and books, and also doesn't have that kind of scholarly wisdom. Even if I want to apply dogmas to people, I can't. If you are like those pedantic scholars who read books, you will have read all the books into a dog's stomach. At this point, Xiao Yi was shocked again, knowing that she had said something wrong. She stole a glance at Xiao Hua, but she couldn't see his expression clearly, so she covered it up and said, "On the other hand, the famous great scholars, although they are well-read and can write poems that can shock the wind and rain and make ghosts and gods weep, they also won't take advantage of their seniority, Dong." Just as Xiao Yi was afraid that Xiao Hua would get angry and was trying her best to remedy the situation, she heard a clear bell ring outside the window. Not only did this voice cover up all the other noises in an instant, it even swept away the heat that filled the entire space. "Senior, the auction has begun. If you have anything you want to bid, feel free to tell this servant." Xiao Yi breathed a sigh of relief and said hurriedly. Xiao Hua had participated in many auction gatherings, but when had he ever received such treatment? He didn't need to know how to bid. He only needed to tell Xiao Yi, and it would be easy. Xiao Hua nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Then I will have to trouble Miss Xiao Yi." "I don't dare." Xiao Hua's seemingly ordinary words made Xiao Yi's tense heartstrings immediately relax. Xiao Hua didn't pay attention to it. He only looked outside the window and saw that in the center of the space, a burst of star patterns flashed, and a fist-sized brilliance appeared out of thin air. It was just that this brilliance was too dazzling, just like a heartbeat. It was dazzling to Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua looked carefully again, the brilliance had already turned into 3 balls of light, and they were rapidly expanding. In just a moment, they had already turned into 3 balls of light of different shapes and colors. Hua! The sound of huge waves suddenly filled the entire space, and 3 water-blue brilliances appeared from the edges of the 3 balls of light. Like a huge wave, rushed to the center, which was where the brilliance had appeared. On the tip of the wave, the boat that everyone was sitting on previously floated out of the water. A handsome scholar holding a folding fan stood on the boat with a serene expression. Chapter 3269. After the scholar appeared, the water quickly retreated and turned into a strangely shaped pool of blue water that surrounded the 3 different colored balls of light. At first, Xiao Hua was astonished by the appearance of these balls of light. He didn't know what these balls of light meant, but when the waves of water appeared and turned into a water blue color that separated the 3 balls of light, he immediately had a sliver of understanding. Wasn't this the appearance of the 3 continents? Weren't these water streams the 4 seas? However, Xiao Hua was somewhat baffled. The Dawn Rain continent was incomparably huge, and no one knew its shape. Why did the people of the 3 continents know? Could it be that the cultivators of the 3 continents had a higher cultivation level than the Dawn Rain continent? With these thoughts, Xiao Hua's attention was clearly different from others. He stared closely at the edges of these balls of light. Unfortunately, the edges of these balls of light were abnormally blurry. If they were the boundaries of the 3 continents, wouldn't that be too deceptive? Fellow immortals, seniors, good evening. The scholar stood at the bow of the boat and gently opened the folding fan in his hand. He slightly shook it and cupped his fists towards the surrounding people. "This one's surname is Yu and given name is Xian. My courtesy name is Linfeng. Today, my star-plucking pavilion's Bright Moon Palace's auction will be hosted by this one. Oh, I forgot. Although this one can't see you all, this one can't be talking to myself in this sea of stars, right? And fortunately, there are a few Buddhist masters and my Confucian seniors accompanying me." As he spoke, Yu Linfeng stomped his foot. The boat beneath his feet instantly shattered, turning into thousands of fragments that scattered in all directions. Pa pa pa. The sound of rain hitting banana leaves rang out. The star patterns from before all shattered, revealing the human figures that sat around the Bright Moon Palace. They were condensed from stardust. Xiao Hua slightly poked his head out and saw that the entire Bright Moon Palace seemed to be in a spiral shape. Those spiral stripes were where the cultivators were sitting, and Xiao Hua and the others were sitting on the highest floor. The room on the highest floor was also affected, revealing the appearance of a window in space. However, everything inside the window couldn't be seen clearly. Hee, although this one can't see the faces of fellow immortals, this way, I can always feel that someone is listening and watching. It's much better than playing the lute to a cow. Yu Linfeng's voice was very exaggerated. It sounded humorous, and many people actually laughed. Yu Linfeng circled around Bright Moon Palace again and said, "Originally, this auction was the same as the previous ones. I wanted to see if there were any familiar immortal friends. If there were many familiar immortal friends, I wouldn't have to waste my breath explaining the rules of the auction. But everyone is still hugging the pipa and covering half of their faces. Oh, the masters don't count." Boom! Some people roared with laughter again. Therefore, I have no choice but to explain the rules of the auction once again. Fellow Taoists who have already heard it can cover their ears. Yu Linfeng said from below. Xiao Huan narrowed his eyes as he looked at the 3 balls of light. He didn't listen carefully. Now that he had little E by his side to serve him, he could just tell her if he wanted to bid on something. Why would he need to listen to the rules for no reason? Presumably, the cultivators on the same floor as him with the 3 Dawn Star plate wouldn't listen carefully. Little E Xiao Hua suddenly asked. In this room, no matter what this old man says, you have to listen, right? When Little E heard this, a trace of panic appeared on her face. She slightly clenched her teeth and said, "No, that's right. Senior's words, this servant has to listen." Then let this old man ask you. The tricolored brilliance under Yu Linfeng's feet should be the shape of the 3 continents, right? Xiao Hua didn't notice Little E's strange behavior and only asked indifferently. Little E was stunned and hurriedly replied, Yes, that's right. These are the 3 continents and 4 seas." Then that's strange. Xiao Hua muttered and probed. According to this old man's knowledge, these 3 continents don't have an end. Where did this shape come from? Xiao Hua was naturally confused. If Little E said that he was wrong, he would definitely make Little E listen to his orders and not tell anyone about this. Unfortunately, Little E laughed again and said, "Of course. This is my Zhai Xing Lu's gimmick. Take a look. The edges are very blurry, and there's also a blue brilliance. Just treat it as the 4 seas enveloping these continents. As for the end, only ghosts know." At this point, Little E hurriedly stuck out her tongue and said with a smile, "This servant said the wrong thing again. Today is the Hungry Ghost Festival, the night of 100 ghosts. This servant can't mention them." Xiao Hua laughed. Just as he was about to look at Yu Linfeng, a light suddenly flashed in his mind. He secretly said in his heart, "Io, how could I forget about this matter?" Immediately after, Xiao Hua pointed at the 3 continents diagram and said with a smile, "If this old man goes from hidden immortal continent to Western paradise, is there any transportation array?" Transportation array? Little E stared blankly for a moment, confusion appearing on her face. "Senior? What's a transportation array?" "Oh no." Xiao Hua's heart quivered again. He secretly said, "Could it be that the 3 continents don't have transportation arrays? Or perhaps it's called something else." Oh, it said that in ancient times when Taoism was prosperous, there was a kind of array that connected 2 extremely far places. For example, one was Zhaixing Lu in Bronze Pillar Country, and the other was Zhaixing Lu in Shi Country. Entering the transportation array of Bronze Pillar Countries, Zhaixing Lu would bring you to Zhaixing Lu in Shi Country. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and explained. Little E shook her head blankly. This servant's knowledge is shallow and has never heard of the transportation array that Senior is talking about. And this servant has never walked out of Yuzhou. Perhaps there are other transportation arrays that Senior is talking about? How about this servant help Senior ask? "No need," Xiao Hua faintly said. "You can't reveal anything that this old man has said here." "Yes, this servant understands." Little E hurriedly replied. This request was really simple. Zhaixing Lu originally asked them to keep their mouths shut. Even Zhaixing Lu itself never asked about the movements of these distinguished guests. After getting the answer that he didn't want, Xiao Hua's heart was in a mess. Previously, when he heard Xiao Jian say that to go to Western Paradise, one had to take a boat across the East Sea, Xiao Hua didn't care. He thought that Xiao Jian didn't know about transportation arrays, but now, after hearing Little E's words, he was afraid that the 3 continents really didn't have transportation arrays. The problem was, without transportation arrays, the cultivators of the 3 continents would go to very far places. How could they arrive quickly? Do they all fly over? Even if it was as fast as lightning evasion, then it would still take a long time to fly a distance of 1,000,000 li. Oh, right. Master Qing Chen's rainbow wand, Chumu Wan's flying crane. Xiao Hua suddenly realized, and young Master Duanmu's golden carriage. Confucian cultivators and Buddhist cultivators don't use transportation arrays. Instead, they use these flying magic tools and flying spirit beasts. Little E, Xiao Hua muttered again and said, "At the auction, are there flying magic tools?" Senior should be talking about flying magic tools, right? Little E probed. And Xiao Hua slightly nodded and replied, "Of course there are, and there are quite a few of them." Little E said with a smile, "Senior should know that the word magic and magic tool originally meant to control. It said that in the earliest days, magic tools were all called magic tools. Only magic tools used for flying were called magic tools. But later, there were too many magic tools. Furthermore, magic tools and magic chi weren't easy to distinguish, so magic tools were all called magic tools. This old man knows." Xiao Hua made up the numbers and waved his hand, saying, "This old man is just a bit puzzled. The legendary transportation arrays are very convenient, so why were they lost?" "This," Little E said awkwardly, "with this servant's knowledge, I'm afraid I can't answer Senior." However, this servant seemed to have served a great Confucian a few years ago. Although he didn't mention transportation arrays, he once said that reading 10,000 books is not as good as walking 1,000 li. Confucian cultivators can only learn more by walking more. Moreover, one can't travel 1,000 li without accumulating one step. Only by advancing step by step can one understand the difficulty of each step. In his opinion, not only can you not have a magic tool for flying, you also can't have a flying demon pet. Where you want to go, you can only rely on your own ability. "Sweat," Xiao Hua said with a bitter smile. "Little E, are you sure this great Confucian isn't a rotten Confucian? Sometimes, it's impossible to travel extremely far in a short time just by relying on one person's flight." "Senior, please don't laugh. This servant is just relaying what this servant has seen and heard. It may be a bit contrary to what this great Confucian said." Little E hurriedly smiled. "That old man is a famous great Confucian in Yu province. He can't be wrong." Xiao Hua nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Let this old man ask you, do you know who flies the fastest in the 3 continents?" Little E blinked her beautiful eyes and said with a smile, "Senior has asked the right person. Last time, it was also an old senior who asked this servant. This servant originally thought it was a cultivator of my human race, who knew that Senior told this servant that my human race's physical body is not good, unable to resist the pressure of space. Flying speed is limited. What is the fastest flying golden-winged great pump? It is said that with a flap of its wings, it can travel 90,000 li. Good heavens, it disappeared in an instant. Senior, is this servant right? And it's really not bad." Xiao Huan nodded with a bit of astonishment. "I didn't expect you to know so much." "That's..." Little E stuck out her chest and said with some pride, "Although this servant's cultivation is shallow, and I have never traveled far. However, after serving many elites of the human race like Senior, I naturally know a lot of things." Little E's flattery was really not obvious, making Xiao Hua feel comfortable listening to it. While they were talking, Yu Linfeng outside the window seemed to have finished speaking. With a wave of his folding fan, there were already some green-clothed youths holding red lacquered plates coming up one after another. However, seeing the green-clothed youths appearing one after another, the scene was a bit cold and cheerless. There weren't too many people bidding. It seemed like these were all ordinary things. Although Xiao Hua was chatting with little, he was actually listening attentively. He knew that the things that were ordinary to the cultivators of the hidden immortal continent were not the same to him. Chapter 3270. Unfortunately, in any auction, whether it was hidden immortal continent or dawn rain continent, there would always be a gimmick of throwing a brick to attract jade. Following Yulin Feng's shout, if it wasn't some spirit herbs, some spirit fruits, and even some materials for refining tools. Even the 4 treasures of the study didn't appear. Although these spirit herbs were rare, no matter how Xiao Hua looked at it, he felt that these things were only used to arouse the crowd's emotions. Little friend you. A voice rang out like a golden bell. This isn't the first time this old man has come to Zhaixing Lu. I've also participated in this auction 3 times. Why is the beginning of each auction so boring? These are all the trash your Zhaixing Lu threw at you? If you want, you can leave them in the First Heaven Star Palace. If we need them, we can go and buy them. Every time you take them out to show off, the price is so high. Who would want them? Haha. Yulin Feng laughed and waved his hand. This immortal friend is right. These things are indeed leftovers from the previous auctions. But how can my Zhaixing Lu be so stingy, as you say? As the saying goes, the auction is made of iron, and the bidders flow like water. The immortal friends in this auction are naturally different from the previous ones. These immortal friends naturally don't know about the good things from the previous auctions. In order to not let these immortal friends miss out, my Zhaixing Lu has no choice but to take out these things for you to see. However, immortal friends, don't worry. There are still a few slightly rare items. After bidding, you can see the newest item in this auction. Quick, quick, quick! A group of people began to clamor. Next is... Yulin Feng stretched out his voice and laughed loudly. Last time, a few female cultivators didn't come and bid. The beauty-preserving pill. Oh, that's great. Immediately, a few high-pitched female voices rang out from all around. Immortal friend you, why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier? I've been waiting for a long time. As they spoke, a young girl dressed in palace attire suddenly appeared in midair and leisurely walked to Yulin Feng's side. With every step she took, there was an osmanthus flower. When the girl walked past, the osmanthus flowers turned into petals and fell from the sky. It looked very beautiful. The woman was holding a green lacquer plate in her hand, and on top of it was a budding flower. Yulin Feng pointed with his finger, and the flower flashed with brilliance. Layer by layer, it bloomed, and a green pellet flew out from the flower. This is the famous beauty-retaining pill, Yulin Feng said loudly. I don't need to explain the specific effects. As long as a pretty female cultivator takes this pill, they will be able to maintain the same appearance as when they took the beauty-retaining pill for the rest of their lives. They will not age for the rest of their lives. Woo! Another round of female cultivators cried out in alarm. Isn't this Dawn Rain Continent's ageless pill? Xiao Hua smiles. Looks like, no matter what world it is, a woman's face and beauty will always be number one. It's just that. I don't know if there are many beauty-retaining pills in the hidden immortal continent, and how many spirit stones can one beauty-retaining pill be exchanged for? The price of this beauty-preserving pill is 50 mid-grade primordial stones. Every increment is 10 mid-grade primordial stones. Ladies and gentlemen, please bid. After Yulin Feng finished speaking, someone immediately shouted, I offer 80 mid-grade primordial stones. I offer 100 mid-grade primordial stones. The other female cultivators naturally did not hesitate to raise the price. In a short moment, the price had already reached 5 high-grade primordial stones. At this time, the surrounding female cultivators who were bidding suddenly became silent. The previous rising and falling bids had already disappeared. There were only 3 female cultivators bidding for 10 mid-grade primordial stones. Oh no. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Looks like beauty-retaining grass is not very rare in the hidden immortal continent. Even the beauty-retaining pill that can retain one's appearance has fallen. If this was the Dawn Rain continent, I don't know how many top-grade spirit stones it would cost. Although there was a huge advantage to be taken, Xiaohua himself knew how to refine beauty-retaining pill. There was no reason for him to snatch these beauty-retaining pills from other female cultivators. Therefore, after a few more bids, a female cultivator finally bid for this beauty-retaining pill with 8 high-grade primordial stones. Following that, there were 2 more beauty-retaining pills. However, the price also fluctuated around 8 high-grade primordial stones. There was no special change. Next is the first-grade rejuvenation pill. Yulin Feng waved his hand. That cyan-colored pill fell into the flower bud. The woman in palace attire used a lacquer plate to hold that flower bud-shaped thing and slowly walked away. When she disappeared in midair, Yulin Feng spoke again. After taking this first-grade rejuvenation pill, you can return to your appearance from 10 years ago. Yulin Feng introduced, although it can't compare to the 9th-grade rejuvenation pill that can completely restore one's youthful beauty, it is still much better than the beauty-retaining pill. Following Yulin Feng's words, another woman in palace attire walked in front of Yulin Feng. Her hand was still holding a lacquer plate. However, this time, it had already changed into a light green color. I want to remind you all that this first-grade rejuvenation pill can only be taken once. It cannot be taken more than once. As for the specific drawbacks, I don't need to say anymore. Yulin Feng chuckled and said, "Fellow immortal who wants to regain their youth, don't daydream." Ha ha ha. A few people couldn't help but laugh. It was as if they could see a white-bearded cultivator taking a few rejuvenation pills and immediately turning into a baby. After the laughter, Yulin Feng spoke again. This rejuvenation pill has the same starting price as the beauty-retaining pill. However, each increment is 20 mid-grade primordial stones. Fellow immortals, please bid. 100 mid-grade spirit stones. A group of female cultivators began to bid. Even a few male cultivators' voices appeared. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, this rejuvenation pill was also quickly sold out. Moreover, the price wasn't very high. In the end, it was only 2 more primordial stones than the previous beauty-retaining pill. It was a successful bid for 10 high-grade primordial stones. This was great. Xiao Hua, who originally wanted to rely on the rejuvenation pill to make a fortune, was disheartened by this reality. AI, that's right. Returning to her appearance from 10 years ago, what's the difference between this and the beauty-retaining pill? Even if an old woman returns to her appearance from 10 years ago, what's the difference? 2 high-grade primordial stones is still considered a lot. That's right, Xiao Hua asked in a low voice. How many years can a 9th-grade rejuvenation pill restore one's appearance? Senior knows. It can restore one's appearance from 100 years ago, and it won't change for the rest of one's life. Xiao Yi said in a low voice. Oh, Xiao Huan nodded. Then a first-grade rejuvenation pill can't be taken continuously. Then a first-grade and 9th-grade rejuvenation pill can't be taken continuously either? Exactly, Xiao Yi said with a smile. My Zhaixing Lu hasn't been on a 9th-grade rejuvenation pill for a long time. If Senior wants to take this kind of elixir, it's best to wait. Xiao Hua smiled. Is there no elixir in this world that can directly restore one's appearance to one's youth? Is Senior testing this servant again? Xiao Yi pursed her lips and smiled. Isn't the immortal elixir from the immortal palace empress? Moreover, this servant also heard that the Dipankara Buddha in the Western Paradise also has elixirs that can restore one's youth. These aren't things that I can reach. Xiao Hua pretended to sigh. I just don't know how much a 9th-grade rejuvenation pill costs recently. It seems to be 100 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones. Xiao Yi replied solemnly. This kind of rare elixir is really rare. This servant remembers it very clearly. Sigh. Only 100 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones. Why is it so little? Xiao Hua listened very dejectedly. and he thought of Qian Diheng, who was far away in the Dawn Rain continent for no reason. It's still more convenient to bid for the rejuvenation pill in the Sky Patrol City. Damn it, Qian Diheng, this guy, took a huge advantage of this Xiao. I don't know how many spirit stones I earned from the rejuvenation pill in the end, but this guy doesn't know what to do with these spirit stones. Give them to Mistress and the rest. Or keep them for this Xiao. Sigh. Presumably, with his high standards, he might not take a fancy to the myriad Thunder Valley. Even if he did give some of those spirit stones, I'm afraid it won't be too much. If this Xiao can return, these spirit stones will definitely be this Xiao's. This guy's character is still trustworthy. But if this Xiao can't return, these spirit stones will be too cheap for this guy. In just a few thoughts, Xiao Hua actually sighed twice, and a kind of deep homesickness involuntarily overflowed in his heart. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't say anything after asking a few questions, Xiao Yi also didn't dare to say more. She stole a glance at Xiao Hua, not knowing whether he would bid or not. Below, Yu Linfeng didn't give Xiao Hua a chance to hesitate, and in a moment, another 2 first-grade rejuvenation pills were sold. Okay, there's one last one. Yu Linfeng seemed to be relieved and said, "It's the thunder amplifying wood that failed in the previous auction. Last time, the starting price was 10 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones, and no one bid. This time, the starting price has dropped to 8 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones, and each increase is 1 piece of supreme-grade primordial stone, which a mortal friend is bidding. 10 pieces of supreme-grade primordial stones? Damn it, it's the same price as a first-grade rejuvenation pill." Hearing this, Xiao Hua unconsciously became interested and pulled his thoughts away from his homesickness. This thunder amplifying what has the word thunder in it. I wonder what use it has. How come no immortal friend is bidding? Seeing the cold silence of the scene, Yu Linfeng bitterly smiled, but he still shouted with all his might, and with a wave of his hand, a dark yellow thunderbolt streaked across the sky and appeared in front of him. It was a 1-foot-long branch, and the branch emitted a dark gold color. In the center of the branch, there was a section that was charred black, as if it had been burned by fire. There were very few branches on this branch, and there were only 2 at one end of the branch. In the charred area, there were 2 protruding branches. Looking from afar, this branch was somewhat twisted and unexpectedly looked like a horned dragon. Fellow immortal friends, don't think that this thunder amplifying what has already been struck by lightning once and can't be used again. Yu Linfeng said after my Zhai Xing Lu's appraisal, this thunder amplifying wood is basically intact. Not to mention being able to withstand 1 lightning strike. Even 3 lightning strikes are not a problem. Chapter 3271. Alas, fellow immortal you, although this item has the benefits you mentioned, it can only withstand the lightning thunder lightning. However, the thunder amplifying wood can only block the golden thunder of Gingxin. Even the golden thunder of Shunyu is not strong enough to block it. The other types of fire lightning, and earth lightning cannot block it. Instead of bidding for this item, why don't we find a great craftsman to forge a few imperial equipment that can block the heavenly thunder? Who do you think would do such a stupid thing? I've participated in 3 auctions in a row. Fellow immortal, you've already taken out this item the last 2 times, but no one bid for it. Fellow immortal, you should save your time and let us see what kind of surprises you'll bring out next. A voice rang out, seemingly very familiar with the thunder amplification wood. Yu Linfeng smiled and said, "This fellow immortal is right. My Zhai Xing Lu naturally knows this as well. However, this thunder lightning, is a natural spiritual item of our 3 continents. It is different from those imperial tools that can withstand the heavenly lightning. Although the imperial equipment of a great artifact master was powerful, it was able to block the lightning power and lightning chi of the lightning tribulation. Only a natural spiritual item could block the lightning power and leave the lightning chi behind. If any immortal friend were to rely on this item to pass through the lightning tribulation, the benefits obtained would far surpass that of a normal imperial equipment. My Jai Xing Lu wants to leave this natural spiritual item for the fellow immortal who needs to withstand the golden lightning. Forget it. It's your Jai Xing Lu's business anyway. This old man will be patient. That cultivator sighed, clearly too lazy to explain. Golden lightning? Wood lightning, fire lightning, and earth lightning? Xiao Hua, who was in the room, was bewildered. Seeing that Yulin Feng was bluffing again, he turned his head and asked, Xiao Yi, this old man wants to ask you, other than these with lightning, fire lightning, and earth lightning, what other heavenly lightning are there? This. Xiao Yi clenched her teeth, her face a bit red. She smiled and said, this time, this servant has been tested by Senior. This servant has only heard of heavenly lightning and earthly lightning. That Senior just now seemed to have said heavenly 5-elemental lightning. Xinyu golden lightning should be earthly 5-elemental lightning. Ha, not bad. Xiao Hua's face should be even redder than Xiao Yi's. Fortunately, his skin was also thick for 200 years. He only chuckled and looked out of the window again, secretly wondering if he should bid or not. 7 high-grade primal stones. A dim figure behind Yu Linfeng shouted. Yu Linfeng's face lit up. He turned to the cultivator, who finally made a bid and smiled. Immortal friend really knows how to do business. This thunder amplification would has a base price of 8 high-grade origin stones. You're only willing to pay 7. You're really making things difficult for me. This item doesn't have much use for this old man. It's just a preparation. If fellow immortal you doesn't think it's suitable, then forget about it. That person played it down. It sounded like he didn't care about this item at all. Yu Linfeng thought for a moment and said with a smile, the auction hasn't really started yet, but this rare thunder amplification wood is already breaking the reserve price. I can't make the decision. Fellow immortal, please wait a moment. This old man offers 8 high-grade primal stones. Suddenly, a voice came from the third-floor pavilion opposite Xiaohua. Fellow immortal, you doesn't need to ask for permission. Haha, that's great. This old man, thanks Senior. Yu Linfeng was even more happy. He cupped his hands and smiled. Then he asked the cultivator downstairs, fellow immortal, can you increase the price? If you don't, then this item will be this Senior's. That person didn't make a sound. It was unknown whether he was thinking or had already given up. Oh, is there anyone else who wants to increase the price? If not, then this item will be this Senior's. Yu Linfeng raised his voice. 9 high-grade primal stones. It was still the same voice, but this time it was filled with helplessness. Xiaohua laughed from upstairs. Ha, this guy really wants it. But it seems like he doesn't have too many primal stones in his small Chinquan pouch, so he's playing hard to get. Unfortunately, there's also a rich and overbearing person waiting on the 3rd floor. Damn it, isn't this the legendary Waiting for Rabbits by Tree Stump? 10. Sure enough, the rich and overbearing person on the 3rd floor didn't care at all. At this point, the cultivator who just bid couldn't hide his intentions anymore. He could only follow suit. Not long after, the price of the thunder amplification would reach 40 high-grade primal stones. Boom! All of a sudden, the entire Bright Moon Palace was in an uproar. The previously cold and cheerless atmosphere was swept away by the lack of bids. Everyone understood that no matter if it was the rich and overbearing person upstairs or the person downstairs who made the first bid, both of them were determined to get the thunder amplification wood. After all, this thunder amplification wood's use was very targeted. Since these two people both needed this item, then they both needed this item to resist the golden lightning. Since they had already encountered this item, who would let it go? 40 high-grade primal stones. It was more than 5 times the starting price. It was far beyond everyone's expectations, and even more so, far beyond Yu Linfeng's expectations. Fellow immortal, do you still want to increase the price? If not, then this item is this Senior's. Yu Linfeng shouted excitedly, as if he represented the mood of all the cultivators in the Bright Moon Palace. Senior, the person downstairs stood up and bowed. You're upstairs, Junior is downstairs. Junior knows that I can't compare to Senior's primal stones. In fact, when Senior started bidding, Junior should have tactfully withdrawn. However, Junior urgently needs this item. This item is related to the life of Junior's close relatives. Senior, please be lenient. After the auction, Junior will return to the third floor to pay a visit to Senior. In the future, Junior will remember Senior's name and be deeply grateful to Senior. Fellow immortal, do you still want to bid? Yulin Feng said sympathetically. I also sympathize with your situation. However, auction is auction. Fellow immortal, please bid. Of course, this Senior didn't say it out loud. Perhaps he also has an urgent matter. So he bid like this. There is only one thunder amplification wood here. There must be a place for it to fall. 41. That cultivator raised the price in a low voice. 42. The cultivator upstairs didn't hesitate at all. He immediately added another primal stone, as if he didn't care about the cultivator's words at all. Xiao Hua felt like he was going to sit on top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. These two are both cunning old foxes. One is retreating in order to advance. He actually started with 7 primal stones. The other is pressing on step by step, not giving in at all. The cultivator downstairs actually used the life of his close relatives as an excuse. Even I, Xiao Hua, have some doubts, not to mention that he really needs this thunder amplification wood. 43. While Xiao Hua was pondering, everyone was surprised. The price of the thunder amplification would actually reached 50 primal stones. Of course, contrary to everyone's expectations, this 50 primal stones wasn't called by the person upstairs. Rather, it was the cultivator downstairs who directly increased the price from 46 primal stones to 50 primal stones. It was very obvious that the cultivator downstairs only had 50 high-grade primal stones. After the cultivator downstairs finished calling out 50 primal stones, he said with a somewhat mournful tone, "Senior, please understand. This is all I have." Perhaps Senior feels that Junior's reason is somewhat laughable, but Junior has taken out all the primal stones I have on me to show my sincerity. Senior, please forgive me. This was already the second time the cultivator downstairs opened his mouth to beg for mercy. If Xiao Hua still had some doubts the first time, this second time, Xiao Hua still believed him. He couldn't help but sigh lightly. Alas, this poor child. If it was me, I would definitely let him go. Xiao pursed her lips and laughed from the side. Senior is indeed soft-hearted, just like what I thought. To be able to serve you, this time, I could be considered lucky. However, you're somewhat mistaken. These words, I've heard a lot in the Bright Moon Palace. This isn't even considered much. There are even more crafty and scoundrel methods that you haven't seen before. In a while, you could take a look. I'll point them out one by one for you. Alas, Xiao Hua understood and slightly shook his head. The wolf is coming. The wolf is coming. If you speak too many lies, who can still distinguish which is a lie and which is the truth? However, this old man still believes that this person only has 50 pieces. Speaking until here, Xiao Hua suddenly stared blankly and suddenly had a kind of realization in his heart. What I gave to that Fu Jiwen wasn't just 50 high-grade primordial stones. It can't be so coincidental. This person can't be Fu Jiwen, right? That's right. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua also thought of what Fu Jiwen said at that time, that he brought his humble wife to thank Xiao Hua. Just now, the person that this person spoke of, wasn't that his wife? 60 high-grade primordial stones. The senior on the third floor opposite Xiao Hua still spoke indifferently. Obviously, he had the same idea as Xiao Yi. Alas, with a long sigh, the person downstairs said mournfully, "This junior knows that no one will believe what I say, but this is this junior's last chance. This junior still wants to ask senior to be lenient." Rip, with a faint sound like silk tearing, among the many stardust figures, a pale-faced young master in embroidered clothes revealed his true appearance. Seeing the face of this young master in embroidered clothes, Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh. Wasn't this the Fu Jiwen that he suspected a moment ago? It seems that this Fu Jiwen's last sentence wasn't said to others, but to himself. He hoped that if he was in this Bright Moon Palace, he could help him. Fellow immortal. Yulin Feng smiled bitterly and said, if you want to ask this senior to be lenient, no matter what, you have to add a primordial stone. No matter what you say, this senior can't give you a piece of amplifying thunderwood for free. At this moment, the entire Bright Moon Palace was very noisy. Almost everyone was discussing whether this Fu Jiwen was speaking the truth or guessing the identity of the senior on the third floor. Almost all of Yu Linfeng's words were suppressed. Looking at Fu Jiwen's dejected appearance, Yu Linfeng finally opened his mouth and said, fellow immortal, I'm very sorry to say this to you, but this is your last chance. If you don't increase the price, this amplifying thunder wood will be this senior's. Fellow immortal you, how many primordial stones is my life worth? Fu Jiwen raised his head. His face was pale, but his eyes were like stars. Chapter 3272. Yu Linfeng seems to have seen Fu Jiwen's situation many times. He smiles faintly and says, your life is worth countless top-grade primeval stones. My Zhaixing Lu can't afford it. Hee, senior, look, he started to act like a scoundrel. Upstairs, Xiao Yi purses her lips and laughs. Xiao Hua doesn't laugh. He asks faintly, how do I bid? Oh, senior. Xiao Yi is stunned. She looks at Xiao Hua in disbelief and says anxiously, senior, this is... You tell me how to bid. Xiao Hua says in a deep voice, oh, senior, you only need to say the word. Xiao Yi comes back to her senses and says anxiously, leave the future matters to me. All right, at this moment, Yu Linfeng seems to have lost the patience to pretend. He looks at Fu Jiwen and says, this thunder amplifying would one top-grade primeval stone. Xiao Hua's voice isn't loud, but it's abnormally clear. It's like a huge rock is thrown into a deep pool. However, when the rock enters the water, it's quiet. It seems that everyone is shut up. No one dares to believe their own ears. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Yu Linfeng, who has encountered many unforeseen events, is stunned for a moment. Then he says with ecstasy, this senior bids one top-grade primeval stone. This is the first item in this auction to bid more than one top-grade primeval stone. Boom! At this moment, the shockwave of the huge rock falling into the water raises the heavenly abode. The entire Bright Moon Palace is boiling like never before. A single thunder-amplifying wood, after two failed bids, this time it appears, it immediately causes such a huge commotion. It's actually bid for one top-grade primeval stone. One top-grade primeval stone. Xiao Hua exchanged so many broken artifacts for only 10 top-grade primeval stones. This thunder-amplifying wood that no one paid attention to before actually bid for one top-grade primeval stone. Previously, they thought that 60 top-grade primeval stones was already high enough. However, they didn't think that there's no higher price, only higher. Because this is a battle between two rich and overbearing people on the third floor. And this is only the beginning of their first confrontation. While Bright Moon Palace was seething with excitement, Xiao Hua's balcony had instead calmed down, as if there wasn't the intense reaction that everyone had expected. After half a cup of tea's time, when the atmosphere in the entire Bright Moon Palace had calmed down a little, Yu Linfeng took a deep breath and slowly flew up. When he was level with Xiao Hua and the others, he bowed and said, seniors, although the thunder amplifying wood is not bad, our Zhaixing Lu has prepared many good things for you later. If it wasn't necessary for any of the seniors to do so, they wouldn't have bothered to make a fuss over it. This junior asked the two seniors to calm down a little. No need. The cultivator opposite Xiao Hua said indifferently. This old man will add 10 high-grade primordial stones, 2 top-grade origin stones. Xiao Hua was even more aggressive. He didn't allow Yu Linfeng to ask him and immediately shouted, fellow immortal. The cultivator on the other side seemed to be somewhat angry. How could this thunder amplification would be worth 2 top-grade primordial stones? One was more than enough. 3 top-grade primordial stones. Xiao Hua was usually somewhat stingy, but when it came to a matter of life and death, or when it came to someone pleasing to the eye, he definitely wouldn't be stingy. Seeing that cultivator's voice floating over the Bright Moon Palace, he immediately shouted, 3 top-grade primordial stones. This sentence was more powerful than any rebuttal. The other side immediately stopped talking. This. Happiness came too suddenly. Yulinfeng didn't dare to believe it and smacked his lips. He said with a smile, since this senior needs the thunder amplifying with so much, this item— Wait a moment, the person on the other side hesitated for a moment and said, this junior didn't come here specifically for this thunder amplifying wood, so the primordial stones in my hands are slightly insufficient. But when I heard about the thunder amplifying wood, I suddenly remembered that I have a close friend who should be able to use this item. In a few months, it'll be her birthday. This junior wants to give this item as a gift. Fellow immortal, please don't give in. This fellow immortal, this junior's identity will be revealed to fellow immortal after the auction. This junior will definitely thank you greatly. As for this junior's identity, Star Picking Tower's young Master Zhu is very clear. Fellow immortal doesn't need to worry about anything. Hearing this, Xiao Hua was amused. Damn it, if I'm not mistaken, this guy is probably that bullshit young Master Duanmu, right? Even if he isn't for a so-called birthday gift, you're fighting over this thunder-amplifying wood with Fujiwen. Look at Fujiwen. He's already said that this thunder-amplifying wood is related to his wife's life. You still won't let it go. Even at this point, you still want this Xiao to show mercy? Not a chance. This Xiao doesn't care if you're young Master Duanmu or not. Today, this Xiao will fight to the death with you. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, that person was overjoyed and said with a smile, many thanks, fellow immortal. Cough, cough. Yulinfeng coughed and said with a smile, senior hasn't increased the price yet. This junior will add another top-grade primordial stone. That person suddenly realized and said with some embarrassment. Unfortunately, before Yulinfeng could speak, Xiao Hua said with a smile, this senior will add 9 top-grade primordial stones. Senior. When the others didn't speak, Xiao, he hurriedly reminded, senior, you can't increase the price anymore. Why? Xiao Hua asked curiously. This senior also wants this item. This? Xiao, he said with a smile. Senior, it's obviously your first time coming to this auction. This junior will tell you the truth. The seniors on the 3rd floor all have some background. If it weren't for the last few most important items, it's rare for them to bid like this. Especially that senior on the other side. He's already stated his purpose. He's just short of revealing his identity. If senior increases the price at the beginning of the auction, then that's shedding all pretense of cordiality. This face could be the face of that country's monarch, a sect, or an aristocratic family. Senior, you must think carefully. This senior understands. Xiao Huan nodded indifferently. Sure enough, the other side was silent and didn't say another word. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be squatting in a corner of the room and drawing circles. Senior, you've offended that senior. Xiao Yi muttered with a bitter face. Now that things had come to this point, the women who serve in the room would most likely be implicated as well. When a city gate is on fire, the fish in the moat will suffer. This had always been an unbreakable principle. If Xiao Hua saw that he couldn't afford to offend the cultivator on the other side, he could just say that Xiao Yi didn't warn him and he didn't understand this rule. Wouldn't that be the best way out? Star Plucking Tower or the cultivator on the other side might not be able to do anything to Xiao Hua. Then where would they get their face from? They could only remedy it from a girl like Xiao Yi. This kind of thing had happened before, and it wasn't like Xiao Yi hadn't seen it before. Her mood was already somewhat bad. Cough, cough. Since senior has increased the price, this item is senior's. Yulinfeng coughed a bit. He was naturally willing to bid for the thunder amplification wood at a good price, but such a bidding war also made him tremble with fear. With a wave of Yulinfeng's hand, that thunder amplification would slowly flew in front of Xiaohua. Does senior want to pay the primeval stones first, or do you want to pay after the auction? If you pay now, you can get this thunder amplification wood now. Xiao Yi forced herself to smile and said, Senior doesn't need to do anything. You just need to tell this junior what to do. And naturally, I have to pay the primeval stones now, Xiao Hua said indifferently. Also, call that scholar downstairs who revealed his face. Xiao Yi was stunned. Senior, are you talking about the young master who bid for this thunder amplification with just now? And yes, Xiao Hua nodded. He took out the primeval stones from the space and handed them to Xiao Yi, saying, just give this thunder amplification wood to him. No, no way. Xiao Yi cried out in shock, as if she had seen a ghost. You actually believe his words? Could it be you don't believe him? Xiao Hua asked back mercilessly. This junior indeed doesn't believe him. Xiao Yi lowered her head and said, in this bright moon palace, this junior has seen too much. This junior is unable to distinguish between them. This senior is also unable to distinguish between them, Xiao Hua said indifferently. However, this senior is willing to believe. I'm willing to pay the price of 2 supreme-grade primeval stones. It's 3 supreme-grade primeval stones and 10 high-grade primeval stones. Xiao Yi's heart warmed for no reason. All the fear and guesses from before were swept away. No matter how much this kind of senior evaded the responsibility, it was impossible for him to push the responsibility of offending the senior to her. Right? Ingo, pay the primeval stones and give this to him. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Go quickly and come back quickly. This senior still wants to bid for other things. Yes, this junior will do it right away. If you want to bid, you can bid as much as you want. This junior will settle the transaction with the senior after returning. Xiao Yi took the primeval stones and the thunder amplification wood and hurriedly left. Xiao Hua looked below the balcony. Fu Jiwen was looking at him very eagerly. The reason he revealed his true face was to let Xiao Hua see it and let Xiao Hua make a move. Although this method had the intention of taking drastic measures and forcing Xiao Hua could also feel his helplessness when he put himself in Xiao Hua's shoes. Thinking about Xue in the space, thinking about how much primeval stones Fu Jiwen's life was worth, Xiao Hua felt that even if he was deceived, it was worth it. In this world, how many men could say these words? However, Xiao Hua didn't dare to wait until after the auction to give the thunder amplification wood to Fu Jiwen. Xiao Hua's heart was like a mirror, but Fu Jiwen didn't know. He didn't know if this kind of trust would allow Fu Jiwen to persist until the auction ended. If he didn't see Fu Jiwen after the auction, Xiao Hua didn't have Fu Jiwen's message talisman and other things. At that time, Fu Jiwen would be so happy that he went silly. He said that he would invite Xiao Hua to his humble home for a chat and didn't leave any jade eyes. If he didn't see Fu Jiwen, then Xiao Hua's 3 supreme-grade primeval stones would be wasted. Fellow immortals, Yulin Feng, who was in midair, had already landed. He said with a smile, after the fierce battle just now, many of the rare items have already been returned to their owners. Now, this junior will bring fellow immortals to see the rare items in my hidden immortal continents auction this time. Chapter 3273. While speaking, Yulin Feng waved the fan in his hand. Like a butterfly flapping its wings, the fan flickered with a faint brilliance. That brilliance split off and rushed toward the silver-white, hidden immortal continent light ball under Yulin Feng's feet. The brilliance was extremely fast, arriving in front of the light ball in a moment. However, just before the brilliance fell into the light ball, it suddenly changed into a complete ray of light. A ray of light as sharp as an awl. Boom! A huge trembling sound rang out. The silver-white brilliance filled the entire bright moon palace. Within the brilliance, a woman wearing a flawless heavenly robe descended from the sky. Her long sleeves, which were like a rainbow, slowly waved. Countless bright specks of light flew out. This woman's face was blurry, but her bright eyes and white teeth were faintly discernible. Everyone's gaze landed on this heavenly maiden. When the brilliance faded, the heavenly maiden's figure disappeared. More than 10 specks of light adorned the light ball, as if the heavenly maiden had just placed them there. Xiao Hua's divine sense is powerful, and his Tao foundation is even stronger than others. With just a glance, the charm technique within the brilliance lost its effect on him. Seeing the heavenly maidens dance, Fu Jiwen, who is downstairs, is stunned at first. Then, he seems to have realized something. He turns his head to look and disappears. Xiao Hua smiles. He knows that Xiao Yi called Fu Jiwen out and gave him the thunder amplification wood. His karma can be considered settled. 3 top-grade primeval stones were really insignificant for that bone. Since Xiao Hua had this dilemma in his heart, he could not help but help. Fellow immortals, everyone knows that my hidden immortal continent cultivation base is Confucian. Yulin Feng opened his mouth again. Speaking of Confucian cultivation, although I'm neither high nor low, I also know that I can't do without the 4 treasures of the study. Whether it's the 8 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, poetry, wine, flower, tea, or the 6 arts of etiquette, music, archery, imperial, and mathematics, they all can't be done without ink, paper, and inkstone. Even my 10 great imperial artifacts, what? Before Yulin Feng finished speaking, a slightly hoarse voice called out, "You, fellow immortal you, could it be that you want to bid for the 10 great imperial artifacts today?" Cough, cough. Yulin Feng's face was rather awkward. He smiled and said, "Fellow immortal, can you listen what I have to say? What's more, I was only talking about the 4 treasures of the study, not the 10 great imperial artifacts. If you really want to bid for the 10 great imperial equipment, do you think I could stand here?" Ha 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 ha. That person laughed. "Who asked your Zhaixing Lu to make the fairies so alluring?" This old man had just woken up from the beauty of the female immortal when I heard you mention the 10 great imperial equipment. This old man has only heard of them and has never seen them before. How can I not be shocked? Okay, go on, go on. Yulin Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He helplessly looked at the silhouette and said, "The 4 treasures of the study are necessary for us Confucian cultivators to draw scrolls. At the same time, the 4 treasures of the study can also be used as imperial weapons. Of the 10 great imperial artifacts of our Confucian cultivators, the divine pen is ranked 2nd and is the most famous representative. Of course, my Zhaixing Lu temporarily doesn't have the opportunity to bid for the 10 great imperial equipment, because if I see this item, I will use my family's fortune to obtain it. Damn it, why don't you tell me what the 10 great imperial equipment are?" The bystanders all laughed and listened to Yulin Feng's nonsense. However, upstairs, Xiao Hua was scratching his ears and cheeks. At this moment, a light sound came from behind Xiao Hua. Xiao Yi walked back and said in a low voice, "Senior, Xiao Hua nodded, indicating that he heard. "Senior," Xiao Yi said in a low voice again, "that young master is waiting outside to thank Senior." "Oh." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Didn't this guy keep saying that he wanted to save his family? Why isn't he in a hurry to go back? Could it be that he really is lying to this old man?" Reporting to Senior, Xiao Yi smiled and said, "This servant has already brought him to the door of Zhaixing Lu. He has already given the item to his servant. Looking at that old servant's appearance, he has already galloped away. He is not a swindler." "Ah, so fast." Xiao Hua stared blankly, then immediately understood. This Bright Moon Palace probably had a special passage that led directly to the door. Moreover, if not for Xiao Yi leading the way, Fu Jiwen would not have been able to come here so easily. Xiao Hua originally did not want to see him. After all, he had a wife waiting for him at home. However, he heard Yulin Feng's chatter downstairs. He could not keep asking Xiao Yi, so he smiled and said, "Go, let him in. Oh, also, Miss Xiao Yi, you wait outside first. When this old man is bidding, I will call you in." "Yes, Senior." Xiao Yi was somewhat unhappy, but she still walked out obediently. "Junior greets Senior." Fu Jiwen walked in, looked around, and hurriedly bowed his head and thanked Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled and did not get up. He waved his hand and said, "No need to be so polite. Didn't you take off your mask so that this Xiao could make a move? Now that we are here, we are instead distant?" So it really is fellow Taoist Xiao. All of a sudden, Fu Jiwen relaxed. He looked to the side and said, "This is the highest level place in Star Picking Tower. Normally, only Confucian cultivators or disciples of aristocratic families can come here. I have never come here before." You also did not reveal your identity. So how could I dare to be careless? How could I succeed if I did not put on a show? The Xiaohua smiled and did not intend to say more. Fu Jiwen once again respectfully straightened his robe and bowed. "However, I came here this time to thank fellow Taoist. If not for fellow Taoist's help, I would not have been able to obtain this thunder amplification wood. And since this thunder amplification wood is actually so important, you should hurry back. The matter at your wife's side is the most urgent. Do you not care about this little bit of formality?" Xiaohua stood up and solemnly helped Fu Jiwen up. "The old housekeeper has already brought the thunder amplification wood back. This thing, even though the bidding price here is so high, in reality, no one will have any ideas about it. Nothing will happen." Fu Jiwen smiled and said, "If I did not come to see if it was fellow Taoist Xiao, there would always be a knot in my heart, and it would be detrimental to my cultivation. Especially, fellow Taoist Xiao, you are a guest from afar. I have to accompany fellow Taoist no matter what. When the matter in Copper Pillar State is over, I will send fellow Taoist away. It won't be too late for me to return. It can also be considered to be a good host." "Haha, just right. You can explain to me a bit about the 10 great imperial artifacts of Confucian cultivators." Xiaohua did not stick to formalities and smiled as he pointed to a chair at the side. "Yes, fellow Taoist Xiao." When Fu Jiwen heard this, he was also very happy. He pulled a chair and sat next to the windowsill. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he seemed to have thought of something. He hastily put his hand into his bosom, took out a jade eye, and personally handed it to Xiaohua. "Just now, this little one left in too much of a hurry. I didn't even leave behind my address. I'm really ashamed. This little one is from the Yu province's Pingshan country. This jade eye contains the address of this little one's residence, and also some of this little one's cultivation experience. I really don't know how to thank fellow Taoist. The friendship between gentlemen is as light as water." Xiaohua glanced at him, reached out his hand, and carefully took it. He didn't check it and sent it into his space. He smiled and said, "Your jade eyes are actually unnecessary." Fellow Taoist took it. "Only then can my heart be at ease." Fu Jiwen finally let out a sigh of relief. He sat down and looked outside the window. He smiled and said, "This place is really good. I can see the outside, but the outside can't see the inside." At this moment, Yu Lin Feng, who was in the air, grabbed one of the light spots on the map of hidden immortal continent into his hand. It was a rectangular jade box. The outside of the box was drawn with neat patterns. There were even some characters carved on it. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this jade box is different from the Dao Sect's jade box." Fu Jiwen said naturally. Ordinary Dao Sect's jade box would have talismans attached to it to prevent the aura inside from leaking out and attracting the attention of others. But Confucian cultivators use these characters to suppress the aura inside the jade box. Those patterns also have this effect. In short, there are some similarities between Confucian cultivators and Dao Sect cultivators, but in essence, there is a difference between heaven and earth. After Fu Jiwen finished speaking, Yu Linfeng pointed his hand and a stream of true energy rushed out. Buzz. The jade box also emitted a faint buzzing sound. Waves of clear air came from the patterns and characters. Kabiye, a crisp sound rang out. Roar. Following the crisp sound, the jade box opened and a red fire dragon rushed out of the jade box. A clear dragon roar resounded throughout the bright moon palace. Then, an even brighter crimson color mixed with an indescribable heat slowly floated out of the jade box. Everyone squinted their eyes and saw clearly that it was an ink brush that was over a foot long and as thick as a fist. The ink brush was made of a very strange material. It was completely red, and a horned dragon was engraved on it. The horned dragon was swimming in the light, and the clear dragon roar came from the shadow of the horned dragon. What was even stranger was that the ink pen was only a pen holder. The place where the brush should have been was empty. Fellow Taoists, this is what I was talking about. A copy of the divine brush, red dragon brush. Yu Linfeng waved his hand, and his true energy fell on the red dragon brush. The dragon-like light gradually fell, and the heat was withdrawn into the red dragon brush. This red dragon brush is made from the bones of a fire dragon. The dragon engraved on the surface is also made from the blood essence of a fire dragon. When you use this red dragon brush to draw a scroll, or use it as an imperial weapon, you can use the fire dragon soul to fully display the power of the divine brush. Then Yu Linfeng gave a simple introduction of the red dragon brush and announced the starting price of the red dragon brush. Xiao Huan naturally wouldn't bid for it. He smiled and asked Fu Jiwen, "This red dragon brush is a copy of the divine brush. If it's so powerful, then what would the real divine brush look like?" Chapter 3274. Fu Jiwen thought for a moment and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, as the saying goes, a big sound has no sound, a big elephant has no shape, a real treasure is returning to its original state. I have never seen the divine brush before, but I have heard that the divine brush was not made from the tendons and bones of some fire dragon, nor was it made from any other demonic beast. It was made from a type of green bamboo. Only the green bamboo's upright and unbending character could bring out the true noble spirit. What is special is that when the divine pen appears, it always has a faint clear chi. This clear chi can directly rush to the sky and resonate with the literature star in the sky. I heard that when the divine pen is writing the scroll, it can borrow the literature star's literature chi to attract the noble chi of the world. Good, so powerful. Then this green bamboo is definitely not ordinary." Xiao Hua smacked his lips and said with a smile, "Indeed, it is said that this green bamboo is taken from the Immortal Palace's immortal emperor's favorite green bamboo, and it is personally made by a great artificer who cultivated to the literature saint realm." Immortal Palace? Hearing Empress and Immortal Emperor one after another, Xiao Hua unconsciously muttered in his heart and said in a low voice, "Does young Master Fu know where the Immortal Palace is?" How would I know?" Fu Jiwen shook his head as expected. "Perhaps when I cultivate to the literature saint realm, I will be able to see the mystery of the Immortal Palace." "Oh, why do you say that?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. Fu Jiwen said with a smile, "On the hidden immortal continent, all Confucian scholars who can cultivate to the literature saint realm can receive the invitation of Emperor Go-chun and Empress Dongming to participate in the heavenly bestowal banquet. Although the road to the Immortal Palace is specially guided by the Immortal Palace's warriors, the literature saints don't know where the Immortal Palace is. But after all, they can see the wonders of the Immortal Palace." Xiao Huan nodded slightly. In other words, even if they participate in the heavenly bestowal banquet, it is impossible to know where the Immortal Palace is. Yes, it should be. Otherwise, this Immortal Palace has existed for who knows how many years. But there is no rumor of the Immortal Palace's location on the hidden Immortal Continent. Fu Jiwen nodded. Let's not talk about the Immortal Palace." Xiao Hua did not care about the location of the Immortal Palace. After all, that was the ultimate goal of Confucian cultivation, and it was far from him. "Let's talk about the 10 great imperial equipment." Fu Jiwen pointed at the falling fire dragon brush and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao already knows about the second-ranked divine brush. The 10th ranked imperial artifact is the 10,000 transformation scarf. Ever-changing scarf." When Xiao Hua heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. This myriad of transformations sounds like, why does it have something to do with my Tao, sex, Dharma artifacts? Fu Jiwen smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, didn't I say it before? Although Taoism had been in decline for a long time, both Taoism and Confucianism were passed down from ancient times. Both sects had their own advantages and disadvantages, but they could also learn from each other. As for who was whose essence and who was whose fabrication, Who would be able to tell? The ever-changing scarf is a Confucian scarf used by a Confucian scholar. Rumor has it that when worn on the head, not only can it change one's appearance at will, but also when reciting poems, the clear air on the head can connect to the stars. Different times can connect to different constellations, and when drawing inscriptions, it can also borrow the power of the constellations. Inscriptions? Xiaohua heard a new term. Fu Jiwen immediately explained. Inscriptions are words that are written with a divine brush and contain an aura of righteousness. When these words are written on paper, the paper becomes a scroll. If it is directly written in the air to counter the enemy, it is called inscriptions. Oh, right, the words carved on the jade box, just now, can be called inscriptions. These inscriptions should be similar to the Dao Sect's runes. Xiao Huan nodded. If that's the case, then I understand. These runes and inscriptions are indeed different methods to achieve the same result. The 9th-ranked imperial equipment is misty like immortal robe. Fu Jiwen said again. The biggest effect of this imperial equipment is that it can create auspicious clouds in the 9 heavens and dance with the white clouds. It is the fastest flying imperial equipment among the top 10 imperial equipment. It can be considered as a real imperial equipment. Of course, this immortal robe can also become invisible and illusory. Even if it is as strong as the sage of literature, it will not be easy to detect. Good. So, to say who can wear this misty like immortal robe in this world, there's almost no one who can defeat him. In this lifetime, even if he can't beat him, he can still escape with his life. It is indeed so. Fu Jiwen laughed and said, speaking of this misty like immortal robe, there is a wonderful thing. Oh, quickly tell me about it. Xiao Hua liked strange things the most and withdrew his gaze from the auction. This matter happened in the Pure Land world. Fu Jiwen said tirelessly. The Buddhist sect has always claimed that they are benevolent and pity the world. They even shout out slogans such as sweeping the floor for fear of hurting the lives of ants and cherishing moths. A Confucian scholar in my hidden immortal continent thinks that human nature is evil. How can there be such a benevolent person? Even if there is such a person, it is impossible for the entire Buddhist sect to be like that. Thus, in front of a famous temple in the Pure Land world, a very ferocious and filthy beggar appeared. Every morning, this beggar would come when it was time to give out porridge and would leave after eating the porridge. He would not give these Buddhist sect monks the opportunity to say Zen. At the beginning, the monks of this temple were very obedient and did not get tired of it. Every day, they would chant the name of Buddha and give porridge to this beggar. They would also take advantage of the time when they were giving porridge to explain some Buddhist teachings. Unfortunately, that beggar did not listen at all. This continued for 3 years. The beggars who came to eat porridge left wave after wave. However, this beggar's appearance was the same as before, regardless of rain or shine. The beggar did not change, but the monks who gave porridge began to slack off. From the 4th year onwards, the porridge bowl slowly became half a bowl. Moreover, they no longer taught any Buddhist teachings to this beggar. They only chanted the name of Buddha to deal with him. Since he began to slack off, in the future, it will be even more uncontrollable. Xiaohua thoughtfully said, this monk who gave porridge is not a senior monk of this temple. I'm afraid that he fell into the beggar's trap. Indeed, before the 6th year, the monk who gave porridge had already begun to speak ill of him. Even when there was no one around, he would drive the beggar away. The so-called Buddhist mercy had long been thrown to the back of his head. Fu Jiwen laughed. The most tragic thing was that one day in the 7th year, the weather seemed to be extremely cold. Except for this beggar, no other beggar went to eat porridge. And the rule of this temple is that as long as someone comes to eat porridge, they must give porridge. I don't know if this monk was in a bad mood, or if it was cold and he did not want to give porridge, or some other reason. In short, this monk actually had a conflict with this beggar when he was giving porridge. He used a porridge spoon to break the beggar's skull, causing his brain to splatter everywhere. Good boy, Xiao Hua laughed. This time, The trouble is really big. Yes, this kind of trouble can really be big or small. Fu Jiwen said in all seriousness. This is also the key to the beggar's test. After all, giving porridge or not, patience or not, are all small things. This life and death is righteousness, whether or not he is a beggar. Alas, this Confucian scholar is really patient. Xiao Hua sighed. He actually spent 6 years of effort to investigate the good and evil of human nature, the hypocrisy of Buddhism. This world is most afraid of this kind of persistent investigation. Fu Jiwen shook his head. If fellow Xiao does not have this kind of persistence, I'm afraid that the road you can walk in the future will not be long. Ha! Young Master Fu is absolutely right. Hearing Fu Jiwen's tone, Xiaohua unconsciously felt warm in his heart. Although these words are not pleasant to hear, they are really for his own good. Moreover, Xiaohua also heard that Fu Jiwen should be able to sense his cultivation and feel that his cultivation is still shallow. It's only because he has a lot of primordial stones that he can reach the 3rd floor of Bright Moon Palace. This monk has caused a disaster. The safest way is to directly return to the temple and admit his mistake to the abbot and ask the expert in the temple to perform a ritual for this beggar. No matter what, the abbot will not let this monk pay with his life for this beggar. After all, that place is not my hidden immortal continent. Fu Jiwen said again. Unfortunately, this monk was lucky. Seeing that there was no one around and the wind and snow covered the sky, he boldly dragged this beggar's corpse into the wilderness and threw it down the cliff. Seeing this corpse falling down the mountain stream like a fallen leaf, even if it is a living person, there is no doubt that he will die. Only then did he feel relieved and returned to the temple. Xiao Hua was speechless and said with a bitter smile, "A pitiful person must have a hateful side." Just now, this Xiao felt that this monk was somewhat pitiful. After being stared at for 6 years, who knows how many good deeds he did before this. His moral integrity was destroyed for a moment. But from this monk's actions, not only does he have Buddha in his heart, he also has a devil. This Buddha and devil are the most terrifying. Correct. Exactly. Fu Jiwen nodded and said, "Actually, this monk also has his own difficulties. It is said that the next day is a big day. A bodhisattva from the Great Lane Temple will come to their temple to give a lecture. Therefore, the entire temple was moved by this grand event. This monk originally also had something to do, but he could not refuse to give porridge to this beggar. So he had resentment in his heart, especially before this grand event. How could he dare to report the matter of him killing the beggar to the abbot's table? He could only quietly cover up this matter. Of course, the weather that day was extremely cold. Other than that beggar who was killed, no one came to eat porridge. Even the entire temple was busy and chaotic. They did not know that a murder had occurred in front of their temple. This day passed by very quietly. That monk who was originally somewhat worried and nervous finally fell asleep. He thought that everything had passed and that everything that he had endured for 6 years had become a passing cloud. However, on the second day, that bodhisattva from the Great Lane Temple came to the temple. Before he opened the altar to give a lecture, the monks in the temple discovered that the chests of all the Buddhist statues in the temple had been broken open, revealing holes in the golden body. On each hole, there was a large flamboyant character. Naturally, the abbot did not dare to be negligent. He thought that this was a conspiracy against the bodhisattva and hurriedly reported it to the bodhisattva. After the bodhisattva heard it, he released his Buddha's consciousness to investigate. After seeing these words, he sighed, "The human heart is hard to fathom. Human nature is hard to be at peace." Then, without saying another word, he stepped on a lotus and flew away. Chapter 3275. This time, the entire monastery, even the high monks and abbots who heard the news, were confused. They didn't know why the bodhisattva left in a huff. When a group of monks gathered the words written in the Buddha's heart together, They formed a nondescript poem. Oh, what poem? Xiaohua was very interested. Sweeping the floor, afraid of hurting the lives of ants, cherishing moths, covering the lamp with gauze. Human life is hard to be heavier than moths. Buddha's heart is lighter than white porridge. If not for the ethereal immortal robe, beggars would have lost their lives in front of Buddha. This time, everyone understood that it was the matter of giving porridge. When the abbot asked the monk who gave the porridge, his face unconsciously turned ashen, and all the monks present were sad. Fu Jiwen laughed. The specific outcome of the matter was not spread out, but the name Ethereal Immortal Robe was famous in the hidden immortal continent for a while. This Ethereal Immortal Robe was originally not in the top 10 imperial artifacts, but after this matter, it was included in the list. Xiaohua clapped. It seems that every imperial artifact has a thought-provoking story. However, young Master Fu, do you know? In this world, there are people who give porridge every day for decades. Although he is often hungry, he has never stopped. How is that possible? Fu Jiwen frowned. Which temple's high monk is this? I hope fellow Taoist Xiao can enlighten me. When I have time, I will pay him a visit. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed. He seemed to be in an extremely good mood. It's not a temple, and it doesn't need a time. It's the old Taoist from the Seven Suns Temple in Bronze Pillar Country. Taoist sect. Fu Jiwen was somewhat shocked. Xiaohua looked at the auction downstairs. Under Yu Linfeng's persuasion, the Crimson Dragon hairbrush had already been sold for a good price, and now he had bid for several rare items from the hidden immortal continent. Looking at Yu Linfeng's hand-grabbing, it seemed like another imperial artifact flew out. Xiaohua said indifferently, not only does the hidden immortal continent have mystical imperial artifacts, it also has the Taoist sect's loyalty. If young Master Fu has time, you might as well go take a look. You also have Taoist cultivation. This might be useful for your persistence. Indeed, Fu Jiwen nodded. In my eyes, most of the Taoist sects are deceitful and cunning people. It's rare to see someone as magnanimous as fellow Taoist Xiao, and I've never seen such a tenacious and kind person. After daybreak, I will definitely pay a visit to this senior and seek his advice on cultivation. You will be disappointed. Xiaohua shook his head. This Taoist priest has no cultivation at all. Fu Jiwen nodded slightly, and a look of admiration appeared on his face. If it weren't for the persistence in your heart, if it weren't for the great kindness in your heart, you wouldn't have been able to persist like this. With such people, the Tao sect can prosper. Yes, I think so too. Only people like Master Daoshan are the backbone of our Tao sect. Xiaohua sighed. They're the ones who are supporting our Tao sect when our Tao sect is in decline. Master Daoshan, I will remember it. Fu Jiwen nodded. At this moment, Yu Linfeng's voice rose again. Previously, the bidding for the Crimson Dragon hair set off a small climax. Then, he bid for some rare items. Although these items couldn't be compared to the Crimson Dragon hair, they were still very popular. The atmosphere of the entire auction was maintained at a relatively high level. However, following the appearance of a few rare items, the atmosphere began to drop. Yu Linfeng was naturally an expert in this field. He immediately waved his hand, and a ball of extremely tragic brilliance flew out from the ball of light of the hidden immortal continent. It landed in front of him, and he said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, can you guess what this item is? If any of you can guess it, I will make the decision and reduce the amount of primordial stones during the transaction." One of the 10 great imperial artifacts. Just as Yu Linfeng's voice fell, an old voice sounded. Yu Linfeng smiled bitterly. "Fellow Taoist, you really think too highly of my Zhaixing Lu. Just now, I already said that my Zhaixing Lu has never bid for the 10 great imperial artifacts." Fellow Taoist Yu, at this moment, another voice sounded from a slightly chaotic clamor. "This brilliance looks very strange. It doesn't look like the luster of an imperial artifact, nor does it look like the righteousness of a scroll. But this light is filled with a kind of indescribable brightness. Even my clear eyes technique is unbearable under this brilliance. This really makes me puzzled. If my guess is correct, this isn't a rare item of my hidden immortal continent. No, that's not right. If it isn't a rare item of my hidden immortal continent, how can it be taken out from the ball of light of the hidden immortal continent? Seeing that his goal was achieved, Yulin Feng didn't dare to let everyone guess anymore. He hurriedly said with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, what you said is reasonable. However, you didn't completely guess. This item is naturally something that my hidden immortal continent's Confucian sect uses." Saying this, Yulin Feng opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of clear air. The clear air landed on the bright ball of light, and it was like a layer of thin clouds covering the ball of light. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that the ball of light was actually a block of ink. However, it was just a block of ink that was 2 inches wide and 3 inches long. In addition to the dazzling brilliance, the surface of the ink block was very smooth. Faintly, there were some small lines on the surface. Those lines were slightly fine, and there was a faint scarlet color. Many cultivators with high clear eyes technique could already see that these lines were some blood vessels. However, it was precisely the blood vessels within these lines that emitted a dazzling light that caused the cultivators who were staring at the ink stick to feel waves of dizziness. Amidst this dizziness, another strange demonic beast was revealed. "Light beast!" A voice cried out, "I understand. This is blood ink refined from the light beast's light blood." Yes. Hearing this, Yulin Feng clapped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist is right. This blood ink is refined from the extremely rare light beast's blood essence in the Thousand Devil Sacred Realm. It is most suitable for us Confucian cultivators to make scrolls. Of course, this blood ink can only be used by seniors above the level of Literature Master. Fellow Taoists below the level of Literature Master must not try it. In particular, seniors who have reached the level of Great Grandmaster can use this blood ink to write scrolls that have the power of literature saints." A figure not far from Yulin Feng cried out in shock. How is it so powerful?" That's not all." Without waiting for this person to finish speaking, another voice called out, "Since this blood ink is mixed with the light beast's blood essence, it doesn't need to be written into a scroll. As long as you hold it in your hand, not only will ordinary demonic beasts not dare to approach you, you can even wander around in the middle of the night. All the evil spirits and ghosts won't dare to approach you." Also, across from Xiaohua, another person called out, "With this blood ink on your writing desk, your reading will be like the help of a god. If you practice qi, it will be twice the result with half the effort." Fellow Taoist, what's the starting price for this item? While several people were showing off their knowledge, someone had already asked eagerly. Not only was Yulin Feng overjoyed, he hastily reported the starting price for this blood ink refined from the light beast's blood essence. On the 3rd floor, Xiao Hua smiled and pointed his hand, saying, "Young Master Fu, you just said that the Crimson Dragon hairbrush was similar to my Taoist magic tool talisman brush. Now that this blood ink has appeared, isn't it the same as my Taoist spirit talisman refining? Both use the spirit beast's blood essence and use magic to draw talisman charms?" That's right," Fu Jiwen said with a smile. "A true scroll doesn't need the help of any spirit beast's blood essence, nor does it need the help of a special imperial tool. That so-called divine brush is nothing more than an accessory. This one has only heard of this kind of scroll, and this kind of inscription can only be written by seniors at the level of literature saints. As for the rest, they are all at a disadvantage. And let them bid, left and right. Oh, young Master Fu, if you like something, you can say it. This one only came to take a look. I don't plan on bidding for anything," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Fu Jiwen hastily waved his hand and said, "This one's needs have already been met. I have no more requests. There's no need to mention this matter again." Up to you. Xiao Hua smiled. That bone was very useful to him. Xiao Hua always felt that a thunder amplifying wood wasn't enough to express his gratitude, so he said this. Fu Jiwen glanced at the enthusiastic bidding. He said with a smile, "Just now, this one was talking about the misty like immortal robe the ninth of the 10 great imperial tools. Above the misty like immortal robe is the myriad miles mountain and rivers fan. Actually, when it comes to this myriad miles mountain and rivers fan, this one feels that rather than calling it a Confucian cultivator's imperial tool, it would be better to call it a Taoist magic tool. Oh, Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows. This imperial tool is different from other imperial tools? Yes. Fu Jiwen nodded. It is said that this myriad miles mountain and rivers fan's original form is a Taoist magic tool called the Mountain and Rivers Map. However, this magic tool was damaged during a fight, and it was extremely serious. Taoist magic tools were unable to repair it, so it was abandoned. Later on, a Confucian great tool master obtained this item and used Confucian magic tools to seal a strand of dragon qi from the 9 continents into it, using the dragon qi to nourish the damaged magic tool. After more than 1,000 years, it was completely repaired. When this myriad miles mountain and rivers fan is waved, it has the weight of 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers, and it also has the appearance of a majestic dragon qi. Without great luck and the strength of dragons and elephants, it is extremely difficult to resist. Therefore, it is ranked above the misty like immortal robe. Luck. Xiao Hua frowned and asked, "What is luck?" What young Master Fu said about the weight of mountains and rivers, the strength of dragons and elephants, this one can understand, but this majestic dragon qi, great luck, this one can't understand. Fu Jiwen smiled faintly and said, "Luck is very illusory. If we look at it in a big way, it is the direction of all things in the world. For example, Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, and Taoist sects, whoever can occupy great luck will be able to prosper and develop. In the ancient times, the struggle between Buddhism and Confucianism was a struggle for luck. If Taoist sects' luck was occupied by Buddhism and Confucianism, they would reach a dead end and could only perish and descend into desolation. If we look at it in a big way, it is the development of a country and a family. If a country obtains luck, it will prosper, and the country's strength will be strong. If a family obtains luck, it will flourish, and its descendants will flourish, lasting for thousands of generations. If we look at it in a small way, if a person obtains luck, he will definitely win every bet, and disaster will become auspicious. Chapter 3276. This. Xiao Hua slightly inhaled a breath of cold air. Although Fu Jiwen said it very simply, it was also easy to understand. Doesn't the Tao sect have auspicious talismans? Didn't I also get the Phoenix Jade talisman? It seems like I can inexplicably turn misfortunes into blessings many times. Isn't this what Fu Jiwen said about luck? Because luck is very complicated, Confucian cultivators even have specialized cultivators to research this technique. Unfortunately, I am very unfamiliar with this. Actually, most people only heard about it from hearsay. It is impossible for them to know the details. Fu Jiwen said again, "Moreover, it is said that dragon qi and luck are closely related. On the hidden immortal continent, where there are dragon veins, there will be dragon qi, and where there is dragon qi, the luck will be especially vigorous. Therefore, only people with great luck can resist the dragon qi on the fan of 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers." Hearing this, Xiao Hua laughed. If this is true, then wouldn't the dragon kings of the 4 seas become the rulers of the 3 continents? Wouldn't the dragon palaces of the 4 seas become the place with the most abundant luck in this world? Fellow Xiao is wrong. Dragon qi, dragon veins, and dragon race are not too related. Dragon veins are born from luck. It is just borrowing the dragon shape, and the dragon race themselves do not have luck. Fu Jiwen also said with a smile, "If it is as fellow Xiao thinks, the place with the most abundant luck is Dragon Island. That dragon palaces of the 4 seas are only part of Dragon Island, suppressing the 4 seas. Dragon Island is the place where the dragon race resides." Speaking of dragon palaces, Xiao Hua asked again, Dragon Island is probably the same as the Immortal Palaces. No one knows where it is? Yes, that is exactly the case. Fu Jiwen nodded. A trace of longing appeared in his eyes. No matter if it is the Immortal Palaces, Dragon Island, Great Lightning Tune Temple, or Great Sage Temple, they are all only heard of but not seen. Let's not talk about this anymore, Xiaohua asked. Let's talk about the 10 great imperial equipment. Yes, Fu Jiwen said with a smile. This imperial equipment, ranked 7th, is a wonderful item. It is called Beauty Jade. Beauty Jade? Xiaohua reached out his hand and scratched his chin a few times. As if he understood, he said with a smile, Young Master Fu means all male cultivators should like it. Ha ha, Fu Jiwen said. It is said to be so. But I'm afraid that only the man who actually obtained the Beauty Jade would know the specific benefits, right? Sweat, this kind of thing can also be called imperial equipment. After Xiaohua seemed to understand, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Fu Jiwen explained again. Since fellow Taoist Xiao has thought of one of the layers, I'm sure you also understand that when this Jade of Beauty is used, it can transform into a frightening heavenly maiden. It's extremely easy for people with unstable mental states to fall into the trap. Less is the first blade. Xiaohua sighs and says, the power of this color is even heavier than the power of dragons and elephants, and even heavier than our mountains and rivers. No wonder this Jade Beauty is ranked above the fan of mountains and rivers. That's right. There's several times more male cultivators than female cultivators in this world. It's very difficult to escape from this Jade Beauty. What about the 6th-ranked imperial equipment? Xiaohua pursed his lips and smiled. This Xiao is very curious as to which imperial equipment can suppress the Beauty Jade. To be able to suppress the Beauty Jade, it's naturally the words that have existed since time immemorial and run through the past and present. It can turn a woman into a skeleton. Fu Jiwen says with a smile. Without words, without sentences, without text, those beauties can only be a lump of meat, a skeleton. After 100 years, who can still remember them? Inscriptions? It should be said that the collection of inscriptions and scrolls is completed. Fu Jiwen nods. This imperial equipment is called the 10,000-word book. According to legend, it was written by the earliest 9,999 inscriptions born in the world in ancient times. When the 10,000-word book is used, every word can reach the stars. Every word could disturb heaven and earth. It can be said that every word is a gem. Every word is heavy. Every word is ancient. Under this 10,000-word book, even if the sage of literature can reach the Milky Way, he will still be suppressed by these words. Not even a trace of noble spirit will leak out. 9,999 inscriptions? Xiaohua frowned. Why not 10,000? It is said that when the 10,000th inscription was created, heaven and earth changed colors. Gods and devils wept. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Thus, the last inscription A was merged with heaven and earth, and no one can see it. Of course, if anyone can see this inscription A, their body will immediately become a sage. Hearing this, Xiaohua can't help but secretly curl his lips. Isn't this the Soul Cultivator's green seal text? Xiaohua clearly knows what the inscription A looks like. Xiaohua is even more clear about the power of the green seal text. In this world, besides the green seal text, how can there be 9,999 inscriptions A with the same power? Isn't this the legendary inscription A? Oh, young Master Fu, please wait a moment. Just as Xiaohua curls his lips and Fu Jiwen is about to speak, Xiaohua suddenly waves his hand and says, Fu Jiwen is stunned, but looking at the auction downstairs, he immediately understands. Just as the two are talking, Yulin Feng has already bid for the blood ink. The one who obtained it is the person who bid for the thunder-amplifying wood with Xiaohua. After the blood ink, he bid for a few more rare items. Now, on the lacquer plate in front of Yulin Feng is a jade eye. Yulin Feng is also speaking in a loud voice. Fellow immortals, after bidding for some rare items of the hidden immortal continent, let's take a break for a while. Now, there are a few interesting items, although they have nothing to do with us Confucian cultivators. If any of you are good at both, you can use a small amount of primeval stones to bid for them. This jade eye in front of me records a Taoist technique called wind and cloud spell. Just as Yulin Feng says this, an impatient person everywhere interrupts him. A cold voice says, "Fellow immortal you, our 3 continents have a law. No one can sell Taoist techniques. What are you doing? Aren't you afraid that Zhaixing Lu will be destroyed by the Immortal Palace?" My Zhaixing Lu has always been enforcing the law. How can we violate the iron law of the 3 continents? Yulin Feng says with a smile, in order to contain the great enemy of us Confucian cultivators, the Immortal Palace prohibits the sale of Taoist techniques. However, it is only limited to low-level and basic techniques. As for high-level techniques, they don't really care. As for fellow immortals, there are people with peerless aptitudes. I'm afraid many of you also have Taoist cultivation, right? My Zhaixing Lu's technique is only a technique between the 3 levels of essence energy. It should be a Taoist golden core technique, but it is not prohibited by the Immortal Palace. Hearing this, Fu Jiwen looks at the star-shaped Xiao Hua and understands something. He knows that Xiao Hua wants to bid for this item. Oh my, a Taoist technique of the 3 levels of essence energy. That voice smacks his lips and says, "This thing must cost a lot of primeval stones, right?" Not much, not much. 1 top-grade primeval stone. Yulin Feng waves his hand and says, "Damn, 1 top-grade primeval stone." That voice seems to want to jump up from below. This is too expensive. How can anyone want it? Yulin Feng shrugs his shoulders and slightly waves the folding fan in his hand. With a calm appearance, he says, "There's no other way. It's a rare item worth hoarding. This is the price. This is a technique. Unlike some imperial tool or scroll, it can be passed down forever. Moreover, in the eyes of fellow immortals, it may be worthless, but in the eyes of others, it may be a priceless treasure. 1 top-grade primeval stone." Without waiting for Yulin Feng to finish speaking, someone not far away called out a price. Oh! Xiao Hua was greatly surprised. He looked downstairs. Needless to say, this person must have a Taoist cultivation base. Moreover, he must have already reached the peak of foundation establishment or even the early Jinan stage. Only then would he come to the auction to bid for this Jinan cultivation method. Good, this fellow immortal bids 1 top-grade primeval stone. Yulin Feng raises his eyebrows and calls out in a slightly exaggerated manner, "Is there anyone else bidding?" I'm afraid 1 top-grade primeval stone is enough to close the deal." Beside Xiao Hua, Fu Jiwen says with a smile, "Even fellow Taoist Xiao wouldn't spend a few top-grade primeval stones to compete with a Taoist disciple for this golden core technique, right?" Xiao Hua nods, "Indeed. Now that the Taoist sects are in decline, any Taoist cultivator who has some sense of the big picture wouldn't kill each other like this." Sure enough, after this cultivator speaks, although the entire auction is somewhat noisy, no one bids against him. If no one bids, this item will be this fellow immortal's. Yulin Feng raises his folding fan and is about to drop it. Wait! At this moment, the person on the 3rd floor opposite Xiao Hua speaks again. "I'll add 10 top-grade primeval stones." Oh, this is... Not only is Xiao Hua baffled, even Fu Jiwen raises his eyebrows and looks at the opposite building with some surprise. After all, although the opposite side has only bid twice, the items they bid for each time are completely unrelated to the Taoist sects. One is the Thunder Amplification Wood, the other is the Light Beast Blood Ink. How could they bid again for a golden core technique? Could it be a diversion? This person in front of us is also a Taoist cultivator? Xiao Hua seems to understand something. His goal is the same as mine, also a Taoist treasure. If so just now, I was too impetuous. I thought this person was that Duanmu. That's not right. Just as he thinks up to here, Xiao Hua seems to have thought of something again, and a trace of smile hangs at the corner of his mouth. Fuck, just now from that tone, I can only guess with 30% certainty that that person is young Master Duanmu. But now that this guy opened his mouth to bid for this Taoist sex technique, I'm afraid I'm 70% sure that this person is young Master Duanmu. The person who bid for the thunder amplification would with me just now is really a Taoist cultivator? Fu Jiwen at the side shifts his gaze from outside and looks at Xiaohua. After all, the Taoist sex methods are unique and can use this thunder amplification would in many places. Would a Taoist sect disciple be very familiar with this star-picking towers manager? Xiaohua smiles faintly. Fu Jiwen, however, says with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, I'm not too sure about your cultivation, but I reckon you should be the kind of cultivator who secludes himself from the world and only cultivates Taoist sex techniques, not involving yourself in other things." Fellow Taoist also doesn't know, in this hidden immortal continent. No, it should be the 3 continents, although many cultivators don't dare to say that they're good at both sects. There are often some Confucian cultivators who have Taoist divine abilities and Buddhist sects who have Confucian cultivators' divine abilities. The person bidding may not be a true Taoist sect cultivator, but he may also have Taoist divine abilities. Even if this kind of person has some connection with star-picking tower, it's also normal. Chapter 3277. Xiaohua had already told Fu Jiwen about his situation. Now that he had asked him so many seemingly ordinary things, Fu Jiwen's explanation was also normal. Especially since Fu Jiwen didn't know about his conflict with Duanmu Gongzi, of course he didn't think as much as he did. Let's wait and see. Xiaohua didn't explain and only responded. Downstairs, in this short moment, dozens of high-grade primeval stones had already been added. Finally, the cultivator downstairs helplessly withdrew. Clearly, he was somewhat embarrassed. Good, this wind and cloud art will go to this. Yulin Feng waved his hand. Just as he was about to settle, Xiaohua raised his voice again. 2 top-grade primeval stones. Boom! As soon as these words were spoken, the entire auction was bustling with activity again. Obviously, the first wave of the thunder amplifying wood was caused by Xiaohua and the person opposite him. Now, this inconspicuous jade eyes had successfully provoked a fight between the two. Add 10 high-grade primeval stones. The voice from the opposite side was extremely fast. It was a bit faster than the previous bid with the cultivator downstairs. And this voice, when heard by Xiaohua's ears, actually carried a kind of relaxed, a kind of excitement. It really is this guy. Xiaohua's eyes slightly narrowed. That's right. Since Xiaohua could guess that the person opposite him was Duanmu Gongzi, how could Duanmu Gongzi not guess that it was Xiaohua here? Not to mention that Duanmu Gongzi had already met several distinguished guests on the 3rd floor before entering the balcony. Just based on Duanmu Gongzi's words just now, as long as someone paid attention, they would be able to guess that the person on the balcony was Duanmu Gongzi. But Xiaohua still twisted his neck and competed with him. Who else could it be other than Xiaohua? Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that there were other cultivators who urgently needed the thunder-amplifying wood and thus didn't care about Duanmu Gongzi's face. Therefore, Duanmu Gongzi was the same as Xiaohua, bidding with the cultivator downstairs in an uncertain situation. The purpose of this bidding wasn't the wind and cloud art, but Xiaohua's identity. Even a moment Duanmu Gongzi bid for the wind and cloud art, he already denied that Xiaohua was on the balcony and thought that the cultivator downstairs was Xiaohua. Of course, in this way, Duanmu Gongzi won the wind and cloud art and ruined Xiaohua's good thing. So Duanmu Gongzi was also happy. After all, it was only a top-grade primeval stone Duanmu Gongzi could still afford to waste. Since Xiaohua understood the reason, why didn't he stand up to fight? There had already been conflicts left and right, so what was one more? Naturally, Xiaohua had revealed his identity to young Master Duanmu at the same time. How could young Master Duanmu not be excited? 3 top-grade primordial stones. Xiaohua shouted again without hesitation. Fu Jiwen was greatly alarmed and said anxiously, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, although this cultivation method is rare, but it's really not worth 2 supreme-grade essence stones. Add another 10 upper-grade primordial stones. Young Master Duanmu also opened his mouth. Forget it. At this moment, Xiao Hua smiled and said loudly, "Just now, this old man took advantage of this fellow immortal. This time, even though this old man really desires this jade eye, in order to make up for the injury I inflicted on fellow immortal, I'll give it to fellow immortal. You." Right after Xiao Hua finished speaking, a furious roar rose, but it only lasted for a moment before the voice fell silent again. When it spoke again, there was no anger in it. "Then thank you, fellow Taoist." Hearing the word fellow Taoist, Xiao Hua shrugged and said to Fu Jiwen with a smile, "See, you're indeed a fellow Taoist." This Xiao knows his mistake and corrects it. Can this be considered the greatest virtue? Fu Jiwen naturally couldn't see Xiao Hua's expression, but he stood up apologetically and cupped his hands, saying, "Alas, it's all my fault. I caused fellow Taoist Xiao to become enemies with this person." At this point, what did Fu Jiwen not understand? It's just that he thought it was his own matter that made things difficult for Xiao Hua. It has nothing to do with you. Xiao Hua waved his hand, indicating for Fu Jiwen to stand up. If there's no accident, that person should be young Master Duanmu of the Duanmu family. This Xiao doesn't know his name, but when I entered Star Picking Tower, this Xiao inadvertently had an unnecessary conflict with him. Even if this Xiao ignores him, he'll still remember this Xiao in his heart. There's no harm in letting him spend 3 supreme-grade primordial stones to deepen his impression. "See, Duanmu family." Xiao Hua said it casually, but Fu Jiwen gasped. The Duanmu family was truly a colossus to him. "Ignore him." Xiao Hua waved his hand. He also doesn't know who this Xiao is. After tonight, we'll go our separate ways. Fu Jiwen looked at Xiao Hua's figure, bit his lips slightly, and said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, the Duanmu family isn't an ordinary family. Even if fellow Taoist has the cultivation of 7th grade essence energy, I'm afraid you won't be able to confront them head-on." "Oh, 7th grade essence energy?" When Xiao Hua heard this, he unconsciously felt a little bitter in his mouth. 7th grade essence energy was the cultivation of body integration. Given 1,000 years, who knew if Xiao Hua could cultivate into body integration? However, Fu Jiwen hesitated again and said, "The descendants of the Duanmu family are also divided into direct and side branches, and even partial branches. Not everyone with the surname Duanmu can't be provoked. To be able to participate in this kind of auction in Bronze Pillar Nation, they shouldn't be from the direct branch of the Duanmu family." Fellow Taoist, Xiao doesn't need to be too worried, and this Xiao understands. Xiao Hua's voice regained its calmness. He already had a plan in his heart. This Duanmu family was like the Imperial Thunder Sect, although it was very big, but on the other hand, it also had a lot of disciples. This Duanmu young master's cultivation wasn't very high, but there were probably many disciples like him in the Duanmu family. There might not be any top cultivators who would stand up for some small matter for no reason. "You better tell this Xiao what the 5th Imperial artifact is." But Fu Jiwen saw that Xiao Hua was calm. Although he was a little anxious in his heart, he could only agree and sit down again. He said, "The 5th Imperial artifact is the Divine Devil Chess." Divine Devil Chess? When Xiao Hua heard this, he frowned again. What chess? How did it become one of the top 10 Imperial artifacts? Fellow Taoist isn't the only one who is puzzled. Even I and many other cultivators don't understand. Fu Jiwen said absent-mindedly. It said that the reason why the Divine Devil Chess became one of the top 10 Imperial artifacts is because of the mystery of this Divine Devil Chess. No one has ever seen this Divine Devil Chess, and no one knows the use of this Divine Devil Chess. I have only heard that this Divine Devil Chess is a chess set that uses heaven and earth as the chessboard and gods and devils as the chess pieces. Gods and devils? How is that possible? Xiao Hua snorted. He felt that this Confucian student was the best at making up nonsense. Everything that came out of their mouth was impossible. Gods and devils. How could they be chess pieces? If gods and devils were chess pieces, who would be able to control gods and devils? That's right. Fu Jiwen withdrew the trace of worry in his eyes and said with a smile, "That's right. However, I have also heard of some legends that are related to this divine devil chess." Xiaohua looked downstairs. The auction had started again. Yulin Feng actually took out some Dao sect talisman crafting and alchemy techniques to bid. These talisman crafting and alchemy techniques were obviously more popular than golden core cultivation techniques. Many cultivators began to bid. Of course, the price of these secret techniques was far less than the golden core cultivation techniques. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he secretly said, "Damn it, I forgot. I have now reached the peak of golden core stage. Although I still don't have any signs of condensing a nascent soul, and I don't know how to condense a nascent soul, I should prepare these nascent soul pills and nascent soul birth pills. Now, in these 3 continents, Dao sects have declined, and it's hard to say if there are any nascent soul cultivators. Where would there be people who can refine nascent soul pills and nascent soul birth pills for them? I'm afraid I have to refine them myself." It's said that only pills refined by pill masters who surpass nascent soul can truly form a nascent soul. However, in terms of cultivation and comprehension of heavenly Tao, my green-robed primordial spirit may not be inferior to a nascent soul cultivator. I wonder if the nascent soul birth pills and nascent soul birth pills he refined are useful? No matter what, I don't have the pill formulas here, and I have to find the pill formulas of these pills in these 3 continents. Alas, it's really difficult. Hee, young Master Fu. Xiao Hua's ears perked up, waiting for Yulin Feng to finish refining the pill formulas. At the same time, he said to Fu Jiwen, "Quickly tell me about the legend." Fu Jiwen cleared his throat and said with a smile, "This legend is different from Misty like a mortal robe. According to legend, tens of thousands of years ago, there was a flourishing empire on this hidden immortal continent called Dongchun. This Dongchun Empire's territory was vast, and it occupied most of Qing Province and Su Province among the 9 provinces of hidden immortal continent. It was more than 10 times bigger than the second-ranked country. Moreover, this Dongchun Empire's several generations of kings were extremely wise. Under their political and military skills, this Dongchun Empire's people were rich, and the country was prosperous, attracting tens of thousands of countries. However, in the end, an extremely ambitious monarch appeared in the Dongchun Empire. He wanted to be the ruler of the entire hidden immortal continent, so he began to develop his military force and frantically expanded. At the beginning, the Dongchun Empire's expansion was very smooth, and it once reached 3 provinces. However, when the Dongchun Empire attacked a nameless small country in Yen Province, they encountered an unprecedented resistance. Many of the Dongchun Empire's famous generals died in this small country. In the end, the king was enraged and personally led the army to attack. This king was said to have a cultivation of 5th grade essence force, and he had countless generals under his command. All of them were 3rd or 4th grade essence force cultivators. Under the king's frantic attack, that small country was forced to retreat and finally reached the end of the line. Just when the Dongchun Empire's king thought that victory was in his hands, he heard a series of earth-shattering roars from thousands of miles away. The originally clear sky was instantly covered with dark clouds, and the entire ground was also covered with black flames. In this drastic change in the sky, a huge chessboard appeared. On the left and right of the chessboard, there were 6 godly generals and 6 demon generals. Each of them had their own responsibilities, and they charged out from the chessboard. Within thousands of miles, all living things were slaughtered by these 12 godly demons. Although the king urgently mobilized all the generals to fight back, how could they be a match for the godly demons? In just half a day's time, Dongchun Empire's 100,000 elite soldiers were all crushed into meat paste. Not a single one of them could escape alive. The most frightening thing was that the nameless small country also had no survivors. Within thousands of miles, all living things were plunged into misery and suffering. Vengeful spirits wandered around freely, and even the demon generals who were born with ghosts could not devour the millions of living things in time. Chapter 3278. After all the living beings were massacred, wind and thunder raged between heaven and earth. Torrential rain poured down, and everything within 10,000 miles became a swamp. However, within this swamp, corpses lay everywhere, and blood flowed everywhere. The stench of blood did not dissipate even after 100 years, and no one could survive in this place. Fu Jiwen spoke eloquently. As for the celestial fiend chest that caused such a calamity, it disappeared without a trace. Where it went, or which expert triggered the celestial fiend chest, no one knows until now. Of course, from this legend, I feel that this celestial fiend chest is a great killing machine. Its activation requires the sacrifice of tens of thousands or even hundreds of millions of living beings. Unless it's a matter of life and death, no one would easily take it out. That's why it's so mysterious. My goodness, Xiao Hua sighed. Such a great killing machine. I'm afraid it's ranked first among the 10 great imperial artifacts, right? Why is it only ranked 5th? Fu Jiwen shook his head. This celestial fiend chest is too bloody. Confucian cultivators would never place it first. Actually, Xiao Hua laughed again. This legend is too exaggerated to the point that I feel that it's all made up. Look at that so-called Dong Chun Empire. They're crazy and exaggerated. Do those Confucian aristocratic families not care? Although Duanmu aristocratic family is a first-class Confucian aristocratic family, it's not difficult for them to reach out and take care of this matter, right? Secondly, that monarch was actually able to cultivate to the 4th grade of origin power. How long is his lifespan? He's probably tired of being the monarch, right? Thirdly, so many famous generals have fallen in this nameless small country. That monarch, how could he personally go in a battle? Furthermore, life is the most important thing. Fourthly, since Dongchen Empire is so powerful, it must have 10 great imperial artifacts, right? Can't the ones ranked first suppress the celestial fiend chess? Ha! Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't nitpick too much. This is just a legend. Who knows if it's true? However, there's one thing that's true. Oh, it's that 10,000 miles of blood pool, Fu Jiwen said. Today, that blood pool is still uninhabitable, and it's still abnormally bloody. Even birds can't fly over that blood pool. Back then, I even made a trip there. Is that so? Xiao Hua asked curiously. That place is in Yin province. Yes, it's Celestial Fiend blood pool. And man, if there's a chance, this Xiao will personally go and take a look. It was very strange. When Xiao Hua heard this very unfamiliar name, a trace of feeling suddenly appeared in his heart. This feeling was indescribable, as if it was a kind of summoning. Oh, that's right. As soon as Xiao Hua felt this, he immediately asked, the God and Devil blood pool is the place where the God and Devil chest disappeared. Could it be that no one went there to see it? Xiao, Confucian, Xiao Hua, Confucian, Yin Xiao, Yin, Confucian, Taoist, and in cult of cultivators, fiends, Yin 1,000 years, and Confucian, Xiao, Confucian, and in years. Xiao, Yate. Xiao, 8, Yin. Xiao, how dare you? You're going against your ancestors. Just as Xiao Hua sighed and wanted to listen to the stories of the other 10 great imperial equipmentess, he heard a few angry curses that sounded like rolling thunder coming from downstairs, instantly attracting Xiao Hua and Fu Jiwen's attention. The two of them thought to themselves at the same time, what's going on? At this auction, Yu Lin Feng had a row of 4 scrolls open in front of him. These scrolls were all rolled up together and tied together with purple threads. In front of him, the so-called rotten scholars that Xiao Hua had just seen walked out of the crowd. They stood under these scrolls and scolded, "You Linfeng, you are also a disciple of us Confucian cultivators. Your star-plucking tower is also a branch of us Confucian cultivators. How can you be so blinded by primeval stones? The so-called imperial artifacts, the so-called spiritual herbs, the so-called blood ink, you could just bid. Those are only used for cultivation, defense, and attack. But although the calligraphy and paintings of the great scholars of the early years contain an unparalleled noble spirit, they themselves represent the academic achievements of these great scholars. They are the crystallization of their lifetime's knowledge, and can't be compared to those earthly imperial artifacts and scrolls. You're bidding for the painstaking efforts of these great scholars in public. Isn't that a disgrace to culture? Isn't that a disgrace to your ancestors?" Although Yu Linfeng's expression was somewhat awkward, he still carefully cupped his hands and said, "Seniors, although these scrolls are the writings of great scholars, they're still scrolls. Our star-picking tower can't just keep these sacred objects in our tower, can we? We have to let these great scholars' knowledge be admired by the younger generation, right? Perhaps our star-picking towers method is a bit wrong, a bit vulgar, and can't hear your eyes, but it's still our star-picking tower's way of commemorating and valuing these great scholars, right?" "Bullshit." An old man with a bald head and a few strands of white hair under his chin raised his walking stick and swung it at Yu Linfeng in midair. He scolded, "I'll beat you to death, you unfilial junior. The calligraphy and paintings of great scholars are elegant objects that can only be admired in a quiet room. Once these elegant objects are here, they're stained with the stench of money. Inside, the noble spirit that all of you are drooling over is also somewhat inferior. Although these calligraphy and paintings have an incomparably pure, noble spirit, these are the condensation of the great scholar's essence, qi, and spirit. They're not used for ordinary attacks." Another old man raised his trembling arm and said, "You little bastard, your words are even better than singing. Who doesn't know that you're using these calligraphy and paintings as scrolls? Using the essence, qi, and spirit of these great scholars to fight for you? When the essence, qi, and spirit of these calligraphy and paintings are gone, these calligraphy and paintings will become trash. AI, what a wastrel." "Ha ha!" Upstairs, Xiao Hua laughed, thinking, "Isn't this the rotten scholar that Xiao Yi mentioned just now? Who's here to cause trouble?" They treat the scrolls of those great scholars as their heirlooms and don't allow Zhaixing Liu to bid for them. But is this possible? Sure enough, Yu Linfeng said loudly, "Seniors, if you feel that these calligraphy and paintings are the painstaking efforts of great scholars and can only be admired in a quiet room, then why don't you bid for these calligraphy and paintings? If they're in your hands, won't my Zhaixing Liu be more at ease? Your Zhaixing Liu is blinded by greed. Don't tell me the base price of these calligraphy and paintings are in supreme grade primordial stones. How can a few poor old men like us afford to bid for them?" A few rotten scholars said angrily. Hearing this, Fu Jiwen also understood. He sighed and said, "What these seniors said is right. The ancient great scholars' handwriting is getting fewer and fewer. I don't know when these will all disappear. Calligraphy and paintings without essence, qi, and spirit are simply dead objects. It's impossible to show the style of the great scholars of various sects." Xiao Hua just stood there and spoke without pain. He waved his hand with a smile. "If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. Without these ancient great scholars, aren't there still the great scholars of today? There are more and more great scholars in each generation. What's so great about that?" "Ha!" Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly and said, "Fellow Xiao may not know, but the so-called great scholars are also called great scholars. They're not purely from cultivation. They're those who read books and poems, have noble moral character, and are knowledgeable scholars. Those who can be called great scholars, or great scholars are those who opened a school of thought and have a place in the debate of the 100 schools of thought. How can it be so easy for the later generations to give birth to them? So that's how it is. Xiao Hua's face unconsciously changed, and he was filled with respect. He already understood that this so-called great scholar was not a kind of realm as he thought, but a kind of honor, a kind of title. If he forced himself to compare with the people of the Tao sect, then the founder of the Imperial Thunder sect, Taoist Master Qianyun, was probably this kind of person. Then the debate of the 100 schools of thought. Xiao Hua just said half of this sentence, but he swallowed it back down. He didn't even seem to understand the 10 great imperial artifacts. Now, he actually wanted to ask about the debate of the 100 schools of thought. He was afraid that if he let Fu Jiwen ask them one by one, he wouldn't be able to finish all of them tonight. Let's wait and slowly ask in the future. Xiao Hua didn't ask anymore. But at the auction, those rotten scholars became even more aggressive. They practically jumped up and cursed Zhai Xing Lu's evil deeds. From the calligraphy and paintings of the great scholars to the cultivation methods of the Confucian school, and even the imperial artifacts of the Confucian school, they all became Zhai Xing Lu's crimes of forgetting their ancestors and betraying their ancestors. Chapter 3279. So it's like this. Xiao Hua had always believed in the advice of others. He thought for a moment and said, "Then put down the visiting card. You tell Xiao Yi that this old man has a guest here, and it's not convenient for me to see him." Xiao Yi's face lit up with joy. She smiled sweetly at Xiao Hua and placed the visiting card on the desk before hurrying out. Fu Jiwen really wanted to know who the guest was. However, this was clearly Xiao Hua's private matter. Since Xiao Hua didn't intend to open the golden visiting card, Fu Jiwen shifted his gaze away from the golden visiting card and looked at the auction. At this time, the auction was as lively as a marketplace. Although there were no peddlers, the several old men, whose veins were bulging, looked like old beggars who were pointing and gesticulating around a vegetable stall. Where was the elegance in them? Where was the etiquette? It was as if the beauty of their first love was suddenly exposed in front of everyone, and they were trying their best to hide it. However, as Xiao Hua watched, he felt somewhat sorrowful in his heart. Yes, the people of the secular world often said that there were only two words in this world, either fame or fortune. Everything else was born for fame and fortune, and if these two words were combined into one, they would become one word, and that would be profit. All the people in the world came for profit, and all the people in the world went for profit. This was exactly the case. Similarly, in the eyes of cultivators, there were also two words, either merit or longevity. All other things were born for this merit and longevity. This skill was naturally the cultivation level, the realm, and the strength. This longevity was also lifespan, and immortality that cultivators pursued. If these two words were combined into one, it would be longevity. The cultivators in the world had countless methods. Killing and robbing, deceiving each other, and being selfish. Wasn't it all for strength? And with strength, was it collecting a lot of resources for one's own longevity? It could also be said that everything in the world came for longevity, and everything in the world went for longevity. On the other hand, these seemingly inflexible scholars, although they took advantage of their seniority and pointed fingers at others, what they stubbornly defended was also the thought in their hearts. This thought was the inheritance of Confucian cultivation, the essence of Confucian cultivation, the true meaning of Confucian cultivation. Perhaps Dao Shan, who doesn't have any cultivation, can be compared to them. Looking at these rotten scholars, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of Dao Shan. When they had just arrived at the Seven Suns Temple tonight, Dao Shan's meticulous etiquette and clean and decent Taoist robes had left a deep impression on Xiao Hua. This might be the last pride of these so-called rotten scholars, and also their last struggle. Xiao Hua looked at the few old men who were panting and shouting hoarsely as he thought to himself, "In the torrent of people who pursue profits, the so-called persistence can only be regarded as pedantic and can only be used as a support. In the eyes of others, the dignity that they try their best to maintain can only be regarded as the performance of actors, which can only make people laugh. Perhaps such a Confucian cultivator is the hope of Taoism? Thinking of Xiao Yi's mockery of these rotten scholars, Xiao Hua understood that the previous inheritance of Confucian cultivation had already declined, and the Taoist cultivation method that they had always ridiculed had gradually appeared. Even if it was only the beginning, it was clear that the essence of Taoism cultivation had already been implanted in the hearts of the new generation of Confucian cultivators. After another half a meal of cultivation, several white-haired rotten scholars collapsed on the ground. After all, they were already old, and their bodies could no longer support their rainbow-like ideals. Several Xiao Yis from the Bright Moon Palace leisurely walked over and offered hot tea and pastries. But how could these old men use the pastries of the Bright Moon Palace? What was the difference between this and food that was given away? The old man's face was pale, and with a wave of his sleeve, all the pastries and hot water fell to the ground. He stepped on the pastries and slowly staggered away. Looking at these lonely figures, the entire Bright Moon Palace was deathly silent. Other people might not have thought as much as Xiao Hua, but these old men's actions that pointed directly at their hearts caused them to naturally feel ashamed in their hearts, an indescribable sense of inferiority. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, Fu Jiwen, who was beside him, looked at these old men with an indescribable expression in his eyes. He sighed deeply, and his tone was obviously heavy. "Young Master Fu?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. "Could it be you have other thoughts about these rotten scholars?" Fellow Taoist Xiao, also knows about rotten scholars? Fu Jiwen smiled faintly. This humble one not only has some thoughts, but this humble one has also been deeply harmed by them. Deeply harmed by them? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. "Can you tell me more about it?" "I'm really sorry, fellow Taoist Xiao, but this is this humble one's privacy, and it's not good to joke about it." Fu Jiwen shook his head. "However, although this humble one says that this humble one has been deeply harmed by them, the root of this harm is still love. It's just that this love is too heavy, too old-fashioned." Xiao Hua looked thoughtfully at Fu Jiwen's complicated expression, then smiled and said, "As long as it's love, then it's fine. Whether it's old-fashioned or heavy, it's better than nothing. Moreover, this is love, the most selfless thing in the world." "Young Master Fu, treasure it well." "Yes, this humble one understands." Fu Jiwen nodded. "Deep love, deep responsibility. That's exactly how it is." At this point, Fu Jiwen didn't say anything else, and Xiao Hua didn't ask any more questions. He stuck his head out and looked down. At this moment, he was very curious about these 4 scrolls. These are the handwriting of a great scholar who founded a sect. What would they look like? Fellow immortals. At this moment, Yu Lin Feng smiled bitterly. My Zhai Xing Lu actually understands these elders' painstaking efforts. These scrolls are indeed the handwriting of an ancient great scholar, and shouldn't be treated as ordinary scrolls to be auctioned. Of course, my Zhai Xing Lu has also taken out these scrolls separately as a sign of respect. Moreover, my Zhai Xing Lu has always been a place for auctions. Since my Zhai Xing Lu has obtained these scrolls, it means that these scrolls can be auctioned. Moreover, our Confucian cultivation is the grandest cultivation method in the world, and we can't stick to the rules. We can only innovate at every moment and maintain a fresh flow of water. This is the only way to ensure our Confucian cultivation's solid position in the 3 continents. Forget it, this humble one won't say much. Either way, others will be criticized, and this humble one will silently guard my heart. This humble one is currently the host of this auction, so this auction will be a success. Yu Lin Feng pointed at the scrolls in front of him again and smiled bitterly. Also, this humble one would like to say that the handwriting in these scrolls Although it's also left behind by a great Confucian cultivator, it's not the great Confucian you all mentioned just now. For example, the scroll on the left has the word law written by the great Confucian of the legalists, Senior Han Chung. Fellow immortals, think about it. If it's really the handwriting of a great Confucian who founded a sect, then it's a treasure of calligraphy in the world. Not to mention that my Zhaixing Lu can't afford it. Even if we want to bid, we have to save it for last. Haha, fellow immortal you, don't hold back your resentment. A cultivator laughed. The old man's words make sense, and your Zhaixing Lu's actions are also reasonable. There's no right or wrong in this world. Fellow immortal, why don't you open Senior Han's treasure of calligraphy and take a look? That's right, fellow immortal you. Hurry up and open Senior Han's treasure of calligraphy. We can't wait any longer. Many people started shouting, and even more people looked eagerly at the other 3 scrolls. They really wanted to know who the great Confucian handwriting that Zhaixing Lu had put up for bid belonged to. Everyone, please wait a moment. I still have to inform the officials of the Copper Pillar State. If the great Confucian handwriting is opened, it'll cause too much of a commotion. Yu Linfeng said, gesturing to a corner of the Bright Moon Palace. There, a woman in palace robes hurried over. Fellow Taoist Xiao. Upstairs, Fu Jiwen explained to Xiaohua. The legalists are a branch of Confucian cultivators. Because they believe in using law to rule the country. There's no need to be close or distant. There's no need to be high or low. There's no need to judge by law. They're called the legalists. The famous ancient figures Guan Zhong and Zichan were the pioneers of the legalists. Li Kai, Shang Yang, Shun Buhai, Shun Dao, and the others founded the legalists. In the end, Han Fei combined Shang Yang's law, Shun Dao's power, and Shun Buhai's technique to form the culmination of the legalist ideology. Therefore, Han Fei can be considered the great scholar who founded the legalists. He received the honorific title of Zi and is known as Han Fei Zi. Note, in the future esoteric debate, the 3rd place won't be listed solely for the ancestors. It's in accordance with history. However, everyone must remember that this is just a name. There's no need to take the rest seriously. Apart from Senior Han Fei Zi, the other representatives of the legalists are Li Si and Shang Yang. As for Senior Han Chung, he's a descendant of Senior Han Fei Zi. As for which generation, I'm not too sure. Apart from the legalists, what other 99 schools are there? Xiaohua finally couldn't help but ask. Fu Jiwen smiled and waved his hand. Fellow Taoist, you misunderstand. The esoteric debate is just a description of the numerous and complex schools of thought. There aren't really 100 schools of thought. To be honest, according to the historical records, there were many schools of thought that hadn't been founded. How could there be only 100? There were more than thousands. Confucianism is actually this prosperous? Xiaohua was truly amazed. Apart from the legalists, the most famous schools are the Confucians, the Mahists, the militarists, the scholars, the Yin-Yang school, the school of vertical and horizontal, the school of miscellaneous, the school of farmer, the school of fiction, the school of martial arts, and other schools of thought. Fu Jiwen said simply, even if it's just these simple and famous schools, I'm afraid fellow Taoist Xiao will be confused if I explain them one by one. Why don't you take a look at what scrolls the Bright Moon Palace is selling, and I'll slowly explain them to fellow Taoists. That's great, Xiaohua nodded. To be honest, when he heard the legalist say something like, don't be too close or distant, don't be too noble or lowly, cut off by law, Xiaohua felt a headache coming on. He was a genuine Taoist cultivator. Although he had some Confucian foundation, he didn't have the slightest understanding of any theories or poetry. How could he possibly understand? He might as well listen to the stories of the 10 great imperial artifacts. Chapter 3280. Yu Linfeng smiled and raised his hand. Han Cheng's scroll slowly flew to Yu Linfeng's eyes. Yu Linfeng carefully reached out and pinched the purple thread. With a gentle tug, the scroll slowly unfurled. Swoosh! A pure white light shot out from where the scroll was unfurled, as if opening a door under the sun. Buzz! Another sword hum followed the white light. Boom! The light was so dazzling that even someone as strong as Xiao Hua couldn't help but squint. Before he could get used to the light, another muffled, thunderous sound rushed out from the scroll like a torrential river, going against the heavens and rushing towards the top of the bright moon palace. Silala, with a sound that sounded like it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, the defensive primary formation on top of the Bright Moon Palace was instantly destroyed by the overwhelming gang chi contained within the white light. Not only did the countless sword cries within the Bright Moon Palace resonate, but the overwhelming gang chi also pierced straight into the night sky like a giant sword. Bright Moon Square was a place that didn't sleep. It was brightly lit, and people didn't sleep at all. Jiaxing Lu was an extremely mysterious place to them, because those who could come to Bright Moon Square were all rich, but rich people might not be able to go to Jiaxing Lu. Even if some people who didn't know the details wanted to take a look at Jiaxing Lu, they didn't have any vitality stones or traces of cultivation. It was difficult for them to enter Jiaxing Lu. Now, this giant flying sword was like a heavenly soldier rushing into the night sky. Everyone within 10 miles could see it clearly. How could they not be shocked? Inevitably, everyone in the Bright Moon Lane escaped from the nephrite and the fine wine. They stretched their bodies to look at the flying sword in the night sky, gesticulating with their hands and feet. They were abnormally excited as they discussed incessantly. Such a grand occasion was even more beautiful than any fireworks. Although all eyes in Bright Moon Square were focused on Jiaxing Lu, although those who hadn't slept yet were also focused on Jiaxing Lu, the vast energy that represented righteousness and righteousness couldn't illuminate the night sky. Between the light and darkness, there were still some ghosts that wandered freely in the darkness, undisturbed by the sharpness of the flying sword. This is the sword chi of a sword cultivator. The moment Han Qing opened the scroll, the brilliance was so brilliant that Xiao Hua couldn't help but close his eyes. However, even so, the large law character still passed through Xiao Hua's eyes and engraved itself into his mind. Every stroke of this law character was in the shape of a flying sword. The entire brilliance rushing into the night sky was also a soaring sword energy. Xiao Hua, who was used to seeing sword chi in Dawn Rain Continent, couldn't help but groan. He completely understood in his heart. This sword cultivator is indeed a branch of Confucian cultivator. Moreover, it actually originated from Confucian cultivators' legalism. Alas, there are laws in the mortal world with punishment as the guiding principle. There are laws in heaven and earth with the sword as the guiding principle. Isn't the law of heaven and earth swept away by sword energy? Inside the Bright Moon Palace, the sounds of metal clanging could be heard. Some were the cries of swords, and some were the cries of weapons. Even some of the weaker cultivators had their true energy stirred. Whoosh! Yulin Feng shook the scroll in his hand, and the scroll slowly closed up. The sword light that soared into the sky was absorbed into the scroll. Naturally, the sounds of metal clanging within the Bright Moon Palace gradually faded away, and the palace gradually returned to its previous calm. Good heavens, this is merely Senior Han Cheng's handwriting, but it already has such a powerful aura. The majestic aura contained in this handwriting can really shock heaven and earth. Even after fellow immortal you put away the scroll, this one still hasn't seen Senior Han's original handwriting. If someone were to hold this scroll, wouldn't it be comparable to her imperial weapon? A shocked voice couldn't help but speak. I just don't know. If it was Senior Han Fizi's original handwriting, what kind of aura would it have? Fellow immortal, what you said is also this one's thoughts. Yu Linfeng's eyes flashed with fervor as he looked at the scroll in front of him. Although this one hasn't seen that kind of heaven-shaking aura, this one heard from the seniors of Star Plucking Tower that if it was Senior Han Fizi's handwriting, this brilliance should be able to penetrate the outer realms and reflect the power of the outer realm stars. No evil in the world can resist this power of starlight. In particular, if it was Senior Han Feezy's handwriting. What broke through just now wasn't my Bright Moon Palace's origin array, but all the restrictions within a radius of 100 li would no longer exist. Damn it, others didn't say anything, but Xiao Hua jumped up first and scolded with a smile. How is that possible? This thing isn't a real spiritual treasure. Without anyone activating it, how can it have such power? Unfortunately, before Xiao Hua finished speaking, Fu Jiwen laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you're still lacking. What Yulin Feng said. I'm afraid it's not enough to describe Senior Han Feezy's original handwriting at his peak. According to this one's ancestors 100,000 years ago when the demon realm invaded." What? Demon realm invaded? Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This was the first time he heard about the demon realm in the hidden immortal continent. Yes, it's really that time when the demon realm invaded. Fu Jiwen didn't understand Xiao Hua's surprise and nodded. That time, Senior Han Feezy's original handwriting revealed its might for the first time. When it was opened, it directly killed 100 demon generals. 100 demon generals. Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. He already knew from Zhang Qingxiao that the strength of a demon general was comparable to the golden core and nascent soul stage of the Dao sect. This Senior Han Feezy's handwriting was actually able to kill 100 nascent soul stage demon generals. Wasn't this too unimaginable? Bragging. Although Xiao Hua didn't refute, it was obvious that he was already secretly criticizing. It's exactly 100 demon generals. Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Taoist, don't think this one is exaggerating. The righteous qi of us Confucian cultivators is the nemesis of the demon realm. Although their physical bodies are incomparably powerful, the demon flames and demon blood they cultivate have no resistance in front of the righteous qi of us Confucian cultivators. Especially when they invaded my hidden immortal continent, in front of the righteous qi that has been settled for hundreds of millions of years. It was like a drop of water falling into a sea of fire. How could it set off a big wave? Oh, this one understands. Xiao Hua nodded. There is righteous qi in heaven and earth. Since ancient times, it has been supporting the justice of the world. As long as there are people, there will be this kind of aura, everlasting. No, what fellow Taoist said is wrong. Fu Jiwen shook his head. There is righteous qi in heaven and earth. This righteous qi has existed since ancient times and does not vary from person to person. Where there are people, there is righteous qi. Where there are no people, there is also righteous qi. It can be said that everything has righteous qi. Even the demon realm also has righteous qi. And this righteous qi is the true qi cultivated by Confucian cultivators. It is not the spiritual qi of heaven and earth cultivated by the Dao sect. Boom! Fu Jiwen's words were like a stone rushing into Xiao Hua's ancient well that had remained motionless for 10,000 years. Xiao Hua instantly became like a clay statue. An indescribable fluctuation emitted from Xiao Hua's body. The stardust that was originally covering his image instantly turned into dust and floated around Xiao Hua. Of course, in just an instant, the starlight and silver light in Xiao Hua's eyes retracted. All the dust fell around Xiao Hua and turned back into stardust. A sudden realization came from Xiao Hua's mouth. It's like this. This one was wrong. Yes, Xiao Hua was really wrong. His mistake was inconceivable. He had always been cultivating the righteous qi of Confucian cultivators, but what he refined was only the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. How could it be the righteous qi? No wonder he had been cultivating for 100 years and was still unable to condense his core. It turned out that the path he started on was wrong, and his success in refining essence in a qi, most of it was because of the core that he passed on to others. Right? Fellow Taoist Xiao. Fu Jiwen was somewhat puzzled. He hesitantly asked Xiao Hua, "What's wrong?" Nothing. Since he found the root, Xiao Hua immediately felt refreshed. He said with a smile, "This one always thought that the righteous qi was the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Who knew that it was actually so different?" "Oh, that's natural." Fu Jiwen understood and said with a smile, "This is the difference between the Tao sect and Confucian cultivators. Of course there are differences. However, sometimes the righteous qi has the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and the righteous qi within the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. However, it may not be possible to distinguish them clearly. Then, how can one distinguish the righteous qi?" Xiao Hua asked tentatively. "Is it possible that there is a secret technique within the basic cultivation method of Confucian cultivators that is the same as the Tao sects?" "It's not the same." Fu Jiwen waved his hand and said, "The reason why Confucian cultivators are called Confucian cultivators is because they use the righteous qi as their foundation. They rely on Confucian to distinguish the righteous qi. Although everyone more or less has the righteous qi in their body, how can a common person like a common person understand the righteous qi? Only people like us who read and recite scriptures can read the righteous qi from the ancient characters. Only then can we use this righteous qi to trigger our own righteous qi. With our own righteous qi, only then can we draw in the righteous qi of heaven and earth." "And I've learned." Xiao Hua nodded. He understood that the cultivation of Confucian cultivators was still the same. It seemed that the so-called secret technique was just an opportunistic trick of the Tao sect. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's heart jumped. He seemed to have a bad premonition. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly asked, "Fu Jiwen, just now, did you see something?" "Fellow Taoist Xiao, what are you talking about?" Fu Jiwen was surprised by Xiao Hua's question. He didn't know what was going on. Xiao Hua saw Fu Jiwen's ignorance and unconsciously felt relieved. In the moment when he was absent-minded, Shui saw his death. Master Kuqin also saw his death. Xiao Hua didn't want this Confucian cultivator in front of him to follow in their footsteps. "It's nothing." Xiao Hua waved his hand and said with a smile. However, just as he waved his hand a few times, he was stunned again. "That's not right. If Confucian cultivators don't need the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to cultivate, then what spirit stones do they use? If they don't use spirit stones, why do they still use spirit stones on the hidden immortal continent?" Xiao Hua seemed to have suddenly woken up. He seemed to have suddenly become confused. He frowned and thought. Chapter 3281. "Forget it, let's just ask." Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. "Since I've already asked so many questions, I don't mind asking a few more idiotic questions." After Xiao Hua finished speaking the doubts in his heart, it was Fu Jiwen's turn to be surprised. If it was some common knowledge from before, it could be said that Xiao Hua was a cultivator from overseas and had not stepped on the continent for a long time, so he did not know much. However, this matter of origin stones was too inconceivable. Cough, cough. Xiao Hua smiled. "Young Master Fu, I've always been a lone cultivator, and I've always been self-sufficient, so I really don't know about this. Nothing. Fu Jiwen hurriedly waved his hand. "What you know is what you know. What you don't know is what you don't know." Fellow Taoist Xiao is indeed magnanimous, but I'm still lacking. Then, Fu Jiwen gave a simple explanation. Contrary to Xiao Hua's expectations, this primordial stone also contained righteous qi. However, from what Fu Jiwen could see, the primordial stone was slightly inferior to the primordial qi used for Taoist cultivation. Of course, Confucian cultivators also had methods to absorb the noble spirit from the source stone. However, ordinary Confucian cultivators didn't use these methods. Confucian cultivators believed that the noble spirit was a living and lively world origin qi. Only the noble spirit that flowed between heaven and earth and was drawn from densely populated places was the best. Therefore, source stones were used to refine imperial equipment and arrange origin formations. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Connecting it to what he saw with his illusion breaker eyes, There are many types of world origin qi in this world. If Taoists picked one type, Confucian cultivators could naturally choose another type, and the world origin qi could also be condensed into a spirit stone. However, absorbing the noble spirit from heaven and earth is somewhat difficult. It's easy to absorb the noble spirit from the source stone. Nowadays, students are greedy, and many students have secretly started to use source stones to cultivate. Fujiwen sighed and said, especially my Taoist sect spirit pills. It is said that after refining with a special method, it can also promote the cultivation of Confucian cultivators. Students who haven't broken through for a long time have also started to try. Now, the spirit grass and spirit fruits are a lot more expensive than before. Humans are insatiable and always seek opportunities for themselves. In the long run, what difference will there be between Confucianism and Taoism? In any case, this Xiao is a Taoist, so I won't worry about Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua shrugged. Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door. There's no need to worry about others. Looking back at the auction, legalist Senior Han Cheng's handwriting had already set off a frenzy of bidding. Even young Master Duanmu, who was opposite Xiao Hua, was repeatedly bidding. Clearly, this handwriting was his main objective for coming to Zhaixing Lu this time. After more than 10 rounds of bidding, everyone finally stopped. No one else bid against young Master Duanmu. However, at this moment, everyone's gaze was focused on Xiao Hua. He thought that Xiao Hua hadn't opened his mouth to bid from beginning to end. Xiao Hua laughed. He finally understood why young Master Duanmu sent the visiting card. That was to test him, to show him a kind of intention. That was to not let Xiao Hua compete with him in order to reach the bottom line in his heart. Add 10 high-grade primordial stones. Xiao Hua said indifferently. Boom! Everyone immediately cheered loudly. This one will also add 10 high-grade primordial stones. Young Master Duanmu's tone was also indifferent. It didn't matter if Xiao Hua increased the price. The key was that he couldn't force him step by step. In the end, it was just as young Master Duanmu thought. Xiao Hua only increased the price once, conveying that he already knew the meaning and didn't say anything else. This caused the cultivators who wanted to watch the show to feel sad. All right, Yulin Feng had a smile on his face. With a wave of his hand, great scholar Han Cheng's handwriting flew into young Master Duanmu's pavilion. With another wave of his hand, the second scroll slowly landed in front of him. This is the second great scholar's handwriting today. Fellow immortals may not be familiar with this great scholar, but fellow immortals definitely know about Confucianism. This great scholar is the Yin-Yang School's old master, Zhou Yuanan. Along with Yulin Feng's long voice, he stretched out his slender finger and pulled the purple silk thread. As the scroll fell, 2 bright and dark rays of light suddenly appeared. Although it was somewhat inferior to Han Cheng's sword qi, the light and dark rays had a solemn air of annihilation. At the same time, these 2 rays of light soared into the sky, higher than the previous sword qi, and formed the shape of a huge yin-yang fish in the night sky. As the brilliance of this yin-yang fish circulated in the night sky, thousands of evil spirits scattered in the night sky, causing the entire bright moon square to seem to tremble. Clear yang is the sky. Turbid yin is the earth. Above the earth is the clouds. Below the sky is the rain. Rain comes from the earth. Clouds come from the sky. Yin and yang are the Tao of heaven and earth, the outline of all things, the parents of change, the origin of life and death, and the abode of the gods. Fujiwen looked at the yin-yang fish in the sky through the broken origin array of the bright moon palace and sighed. Heaven and earth have yin and yang, and yin and yang turn into 2 qis. Everything can be divided into 2 sides, yin and yang. This school of yin-yang advocates controlling the yin and yang of heaven and earth, using the 2 qis of yin and yang to kill all things. The great scholar who established the school of yin-yang was Zhou Yin. Later on, because he was called Zi, he was given a name Zhou Yinzi. This old master Zhou Yuanhan is most likely his descendant. AI, the esoteric debate, is indeed formidable. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, even though our Taoism also has the saying that Tao begets one, and one is divided into yin and yang, but the profoundness of yin and yang is truly obscure. Without a certain level of cultivation, how can one understand it? This Xiao really did not expect that this Confucian cultivator actually has a school of yin-yang that specializes in studying yin and yang. Furthermore, this Xiao admires this senior Zhou Yinzi even more. How can he explain yin and yang so clearly? That's right, 100 years ago, when Xue Xue and Wu Hai's soul entered Xiao Hua's space, he had already experienced the division of yin and yang. If one were to talk about comprehension, Xiao Hua himself indeed has a lot. However, if one were to ask him to form a theory and explain it, it would be extremely difficult. Just like what the Taoists often say, Tao can be said, but is not an ordinary Tao. Name can be named, but it is not an ordinary name. Just a few words can indeed extend a lot of comprehension, or can only be understood, but not explained. Actually, a strange expression appeared on Fu Jiwen's face. He hesitated for a bit, then smiled and said, this yin-yang school might have been extremely powerful in the past. It is said that Senior Zhou Yinzi obtained an innate spiritual object called the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook. From it, he comprehended the Tao of yin and yang and established his own school. However, as the yin-yang school of yin-yang developed, the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook was lost for some unknown reason. The Yin-Yang school of yin-yang's research on yin and yang gradually deviated. Didn't fellow Taoist Yulin Fengjiu say it clearly just now? Everyone might not know about Zhou Yinzi, but almost everyone in the yin-yang school knows about him. That's because the current yin and yang more or less falls into the intersection of yin and yang. Some crooked sects, such as the Yin-Yang Unity School, also passed down some of their secret techniques from the yin-yang school of yin-yang. At this point, Fu Jiwen did not say anything else. Xiao Hua was also a person who had undergone dual cultivation. How could he not understand? Perhaps some dual cultivation secret technique, some fusion technique. These yin and yang mating techniques were the things that the yin-yang school of yin-yang was talking about, right? Decline. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This might be the current situation that those so-called rotten scholars don't want to see. Fu Jiwen smiled and said, time flies, clouds and flowers pass by like water. On this hidden immortal continent, not only are the dynasties of 10,000 countries replaced, even 100 schools are also being washed away by great waves. Only schools and doctrines that can adapt to the changes of the times can truly be preserved. These are not things that can be done by humans. Back then, the Tao sect was tyrannical for a period of time. It could almost contend with the Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sects, and even the demon race. However, what about the current Tao sect? After the ancient war, wasn't it also obliterated? If you want to revive the Tao sect, is it something that can be done by a few generations? Let's not talk about this. When Fu Jiwen talked about the decline of the Tao sect, he seemed to be afraid that Xiao Hua would be displeased, so he changed the topic. Looking at the fierce bidding scene downstairs, he said, such a rare yin-yang school of yin-yang writing. Doesn't fellow Taoist Xiao want to bid for one? Even if this thing's true qi is used up, it is still an authentic work handed down from generation to generation. Forget it, Xiao Hua said with a smile. If it was some yin-yang illustrated handbook, if it was some harmony secret manual, this Xiao would still be interested. What kind of writing is this? This Xiao doesn't understand. But Fu Jiwen laughed. Fellow Taoist Xiao is really a straightforward person. If it was an ordinary Confucian scholar, they would definitely not say these words. You dare to do it while hiding in your room, but don't dare to say it when you come out? Xiao Hua snorted disdainfully. If you want to say it, you have to use alternative words. For example, the joy of the boudoir is even greater than the one who draws the eyebrows. Fellow Taoist Zhao's straightforwardness is a disgrace to the refined. Damn it, to turn a good yin-yang into a marriage. Isn't this a disgrace to the refined? Xiaohua really couldn't see through the act of covering one's ears while stealing a bell. Especially using words to replace imagination, it was really annoying. While the two were talking, that Zhou Yuanhan's old man Zhou's calligraphy was also bought by a certain senior on the third floor. Xiaohua also clearly saw that young Master Duanmu also seemed to slightly raise the price and immediately gave up. Clearly, he also had a tacit understanding with the others. Xiaohua could know, and Yulin Feng even more so. However, this was a kind of mutual compromise. The price of the calligraphy was something that both sides could bear. Who would care about the movements behind the scenes? Yulin Feng sent that scroll to the third floor's balcony and began to bluff the third scroll. Fellow immortals, the writing on this third scroll is also very famous. Moreover, this school created a Confucian cultivation method that is widely spread in my hidden immortal continent. As he said that, Yulin Feng opened this scroll again. Hua, like a burst of water, 10,000 rays of brilliance poured out from the scroll. Like the Milky Way pouring out, it directly rushed into the night sky. It was incomparably gorgeous. Noble Spirit River. Dozens of young voices shouted in unison. This is the school of vertical and horizontal Confucian cultivators. Huh? Yulin Feng laughed loudly and said, Correct, correct. The river character on this scroll is the authentic work of the school of vertical and horizontal Confucian Lu Wansheng. Chapter 3282. Upstairs, Fu Jiwen pointed at the righteous spirit that flashed like the Milky Way and said, The school of vertical and horizontal is a very famous school in the esoteric debate. The school of vertical and horizontal is 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 the school of vertical and horizontal. This is the so-called vertical and horizontal. The school of vertical and horizontal was created by the two seniors Zhang Yi and Su Qin. Senior Su Qin advocated the vertical and Senior Zhang Yi advocated the horizontal. It was in the vertical and horizontal that the two seniors comprehended the true essence of water flow and created the cultivation method of the righteous spirit Long River. Using this as a basis, they were honored as Su Qin Zi and Zhang Yi Zi respectively, leaving their names in history. Moreover, this righteous spirit Long River is very easy to obtain. It is the simplest among the many cultivation methods of the Confucian cultivators. Therefore, once this cultivation method was spread out, it was immediately passed down. In the ancient times, the number of disciples of the school of vertical and horizontal were as many as the hairs on an ox. The Confucian cultivators who answered in unison just now were most likely disciples who cultivated the righteous spirit Long River. Of course, now that this cultivation method has been spread out, they may not necessarily be disciples of the school of vertical and horizontal. As Fu Jiwen spoke, many cultivators began to bid again. This time, the liveliness was even greater than before. This was because great scholar Lu Cheng's handwriting not only had the same righteous spirit Long River as the previous handwriting, but also the true essence of the righteous spirit Long River could be found in this handwriting. This was the so-called killing two birds with one stone. All the Confucian cultivators who cultivated the righteous spirit Long River naturally rushed like ducks. After seeing the righteous spirit Long River of legalism, school of yin yang, and school of vertical and horizontal, Xiaohua was looking forward to the handwriting in the last scroll. He simply didn't ask about the 10 great imperial artifacts that Fu Jiwen hadn't explained yet. He smiled and stuck his head out, looking at the sounds of bidding below with interest. Fu Jiwen saw that Xiaohua's attention wasn't here and didn't say much. He looked at Xiaohua's star-like figure with some confusion. He really didn't understand why Xiaohua asked him so much common sense. That's right, common sense. As a cultivator of the hidden immortal continent, whether they cultivated Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, or even Taoist cultivation methods, as long as they grew up here, they should know this common sense. Although Xiao Hua was a Dao sect cultivator and didn't understand the cultivation of Confucian cultivators, the 100 Schools debate was an ancient story. The 10 great imperial artifacts were stories that ordinary people grew up listening to. How could Xiao Hua not know? Even if he was an overseas rogue cultivator, he still had to grow up, right? Fu Jiwen did not believe that a cultivator who grew up in the hidden immortal continent would not know about the 10 great imperial equipment. Perhaps fellow Taoist Xiao came from the Thousand Demons sacred realm or the pure land world. This was Fu Jiwen's final guess, but this guess was immediately doubted by himself. Essence stones, who in the 3 continents didn't know about them. Maybe he came from the Pure Land. That place doesn't need vitality stones. When the dust settled, to everyone's surprise, the authentic work of the school of vertical and horizontal's great scholar, Lu Wenshen, was not bought by the cultivators on the balcony. The final bidder was an unknown cultivator on the ground floor. Hee, looks like I'm not the only one who's keeping a low profile. Xiao Hua laughed. Fu Jiwen frowned and said, that might not be the case. In my opinion, I'm afraid several small aristocratic families or several sects gathered together to bid. Who cares who he is? It has nothing to do with me. I've never cultivated the noble spirit river, and I don't know anything about authentic works. Xiao Hua stretched. Moreover, this star-picking towers auction, TSK, it's really boring. There's nothing that I want. Fu Jiwen laughed and said, right now, the auction is for Confucian cultivators. Dao sect's items are very rare. What about the especially precious items? Perhaps at the end, fellow Taoist Xiao, please don't be impatient. I know. Xiao Hua nodded and pointed outside the window, saying, what I want to know now is, who is the owner of the last scroll? Which school is it from? The most famous of the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators are Confucian, Mahist, Legalist, Military, School of Famous, Yin-Yang, School of Vertical and Horizontal, School of Miscellaneous, School of Farmer, School of Novels, and School of Vertical and Horizontal. Just now, 3 great Confucian scrolls appeared: School of Legalism, School of Yin-Yang, and School of Vertical and Horizontal. As for the 4th school, it's hard to guess. Fu Jiwen's curiosity was also great. He pinched his chin and looked at Yu Linfeng holding the 4th scroll in his hand. Yu Linfeng's face carried a trace of mystery. His hand was placed on the purple silk rope, but he didn't release it. Instead, he raised his head and looked around, saying with a smile, this last scroll, I don't know if it's out of everyone's expectations. Before Yu Linfeng finished speaking, his finger shook. Boom! A violent vibration sounded, as if 10,000 horses were galloping. A 5-colored brilliance mixed with an indescribable noble spirit rushed out from the scroll. Xiao Hua was used to seeing the brilliance of Taoist cultivators' treasures. This 5-colored brilliance didn't count as anything magical. But Fu Jiwen actually jumped up from his chair in shock, shouting in shock, This is Confucian's 5 cheese unifications? Sure enough, that 5-colored noble spirit rushed into the night sky and actually formed an auspicious cloud several meters in size, illuminating half a mu of the sky. That 5-colored brilliance was different from when it rushed out just now. This time, it was extremely gentle, even more silky than a lover's gaze. And above this auspicious cloud, endless starlight faintly sprinkled down, enveloping the auspicious cloud. It really is Confucian's 5 cheese unifications. Fu Jiwen raised his head and said excitedly, Zhaixing Lu is indeed amazing to actually be able to find the authentic writings of Confucian great Confucians. Nowadays, on the hidden immortal continent, the authentic writings of Confucian great Confucians have long been extinct. That's right. At this time, Xiao Hua suddenly shouted in hindsight, Young Master Fu, you just said that there must be Confucian writings among the century-old theories. Is Confucian the same as Confucian cultivators? Of course they're not the same. The excitement on Fu Jiwen's face hadn't disappeared. And he answered with a smile. Confucian cultivators are naturally a kind of cultivation method, just like what I just explained to fellow Taoists, using the noble spirit of heaven and earth as the foundation. And Confucian is a school of Confucian cultivators. It's just that the influence and scale of this school is far greater than some of the other schools. So this cultivation method is also called Confucian cultivators. It's not what fellow Taoist thinks, that Confucian cultivators are Confucian cultivators. At this point, Fu Jiwen smiled bitterly again, smacking his lips and saying, although that's the case, in reality, Confucian cultivators account for 90% of Confucian cultivators. Saying that Confucian cultivators are Confucian cultivators is not impossible. Who is the great scholar who founded Confucian? Xiao Hua's eyes lit up, and he asked with extreme curiosity. Speaking of Confucian cultivators, Fu Jiwen was also in high spirits, and he spoke frankly with assurance. Confucian cultivators are one of the most important schools of thought in the 100 schools of thought. Confucian cultivators use the 6 arts as their method: advocate etiquette, music, benevolence, and righteousness. They advocate loyalty and forgiveness, and they advocate the golden mean. They advocate rule of virtue and benevolence. Confucian cultivators emphasize the function of education, and they believe that heavy education and light punishment is the only way for a country to be stable and the people to be rich and happy. They advocate education without discrimination, and they should educate both the ruler and the ruled, so that the whole country from top to bottom becomes a person of high moral character. The founder of Confucian was surnamed Kong, and his name was Chiu. His courtesy name was Zhongnai. He was from Yu Province's Lu country, and after he founded the Confucian school, he was revered as Confucius. Today, he is respectfully called Eternal Paragon by the later generations of Hidden Immortal Continent. The core of his theory is benevolence. He advocates love and demands that people should love each other and get along harmoniously. To realize benevolence, one must be tolerant of others and do not do to others what you do not want done to yourself. And the system or code of conduct that embodies benevolence is restrain oneself and return to etiquette. Confucius's works include poem, book, etiquette, music, and so on. These 5 books are the most famous, and they are often called the 5 classics by Hidden Immortal Continent. Other than Confucius, there are 2 other important figures in Confucian. One is Meng Ku, whose courtesy name is Ziyu. Senior Meng Ku advocates benevolence, and further proposes that the people are the most important, the state comes second, and the ruler is the least important. His ethics is good by nature. The other is Sun Kuang, and people at that time called him Sun Qing. He advocates benevolence and righteousness and the way of the king, and using virtue to convince people. He also proposed that the ruler is the boat, and the commoners are the water. The water carries the boat, and it also capsizes the boat. These 2 were also respectfully called Zi by later generations, Meng Zi and Sun Zi. The 4 books that Hidden Immortal Continent often refers to, the Shui, the Golden Mean, the Analects, and Meng Zi, were written by these 3 great scholars. Although the cultivation method of Confucian cultivators was passed down from ancient times, it doesn't matter what it was called in the beginning. After Confucian cultivators appeared, this cultivation method became Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua understood and sighed. The influence of Confucian cultivators on Hidden Immortal Continent is so deep. These opinions and propositions, although they are not cultivation, they are enough to have an impact on cultivation. This 5 Qis unifications should be the manifestation of the noble Qi in the chest of Confucian cultivators being condensed to the extreme, right? Fu Jiwen nodded and said, fellow Taoist Xiao is right. Confucian cultivators emphasize on entering the world, which is different from Taoist cultivators. Therefore, all Confucian cultivators have their own opinions to govern the country and educate the people. This is related to cultivation, but also has nothing to do with it. This 5 Qis unifications is the purpose of Confucian cultivators. As long as one cultivates to the realm of 5 Qis unifications, one's physical body can become a saint, and one can ascend. Hearing this, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air, as if he had thought of an inconceivable question. He almost blurted out, "Then, the place where Confucian cultivators ascend is the immortal world? Is this immortal world the same as the immortal world of Taoists?" "Ha!" Fu Jiwen laughed heartily. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, if you want me to answer this question, I'm afraid you have to wait for me to cultivate to the realm of 5 Qis unifications, ascend to the immortal world, and then return from the immortal world, right?" Hearing this, Xiao Hua touched his nose and helplessly said, "This is indeed true." At this time, at the auction, the people who were as shocked as Fu Jiwen were also boiling with excitement. The people who were familiar with each other were not only whispering, but even the people who didn't know each other were also saying something loudly. If they weren't showing off their talent, then they were showing off their knowledge. Chapter 3283. Fellow Immortals, you can see it clearly. Yu Linfeng loudly said, "This is the word Confucian written by the Confucian school's senior Kong Li Wen. When he wrote this scroll, he had already stepped into the realm of literary star. Therefore, the auspicious clouds of the 5 Qis unifications can also attract the starlight from the sky to destroy evil and exorcise demons. If this book was written by Confucius, the sage Kong Li Wen, it would definitely be a clear cloud with a righteous aura. Not to mention the starlight. Even if one's eyesight was slightly poor, they might not be able to see it." Fu Jiwen sighed. "Unfortunately, this one has only heard of it. This is the first time I've seen the handwriting of a great Confucian scholar." "Oh, why is that?" Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. The Confucian school emphasizes the path of the golden mean. The golden mean is impartial and without fault. The common principle is the natural order of the heavens, the pinnacle of subtlety. Confucius's righteous aura must be quiet and without a trace, without the smoke and fire of the mortal world. This one understands. Xiao Hua nodded. Although he didn't quite understand the meaning of this sentence, within the Tao sect's magical techniques, the brilliant ones didn't necessarily have great power. It was precisely those magical techniques that contained terrifying power that were extremely restrained and wouldn't waste unnecessary spiritual qi. Seeing Yu Linfeng put away the scroll, the soaring righteous aura disappeared. Xiao Hua heard the bidding sounds downstairs, and his heart itched. He secretly pondered whether he should also get one to play with. Actually, this path of the golden mean originated from Confucius, but it flourished with Zhu Shi, old man Zhu. Fu Jiwen sorted out his mood, slowly sat down, and said casually, "What? Zhu Shi? Old man Zhu?" Xiao Hua heard this and was suddenly shocked. "Is it the Confucian Zhu family?" "Oh, fellow Xiao actually knows about the Zhu family?" Fu Jiwen was greatly surprised. Xiao Hua laughed. "Hee, this one can't possibly not know anything. I've heard of this Zhu family. I wonder how they are now." "How are they now?" A strange expression appeared on Fu Jiwen's face again. He looked out of the window and said, "The Zhu clan has been passed down since ancient times and has lived in Weiyuan County of Shuzhou. Back then, Zhu Shi, old Master Zhu's name, shook the hidden immortal continent. He was known as another great master after Confucius, who could be respected as Z. However, after the war between Confucianism and Buddhism, for some unknown reason, the once prosperous Zhu clan actually declined. In the end, it actually disappeared without a trace. Now, there are many surnames of Zhu on the hidden immortal continent, but I have never heard of anyone who is the true descendant of the Zhu clan." Xiao Hua inwardly nodded his head. He already understood that the Zhu family had likely been annihilated by the Tao sect. Their descendants should have been cursed by the Tao sect experts, causing them to slowly decline. It's a pity that the Zhu family has been annihilated, and so has the Zhu family's academic legacy. Fu Jiwen's face was filled with regret. Even now, there are still many students who frequently travel to Shuzhou's Weiyuan County to study, hoping to discover the heritage of the Zhu clan. That inheritance is second only to Confucius's knowledge. If you can get it, it will definitely be an amazing achievement. Hee. Obtaining and achieving are two different things. Xiaohua laughed. Fellow Taoist Xiao is right. But since you can get it, you might be able to break through the Zhu clan's academic legacy and become a great scholar. Fu Jiwen also nodded his head. Who wouldn't like this kind of temptation? It's still fame and fortune. Xiaohua bitterly smiled. While they were talking, the bidding for the authentic work of senior Kong Liwen had finally reached the climax. Young Master Duanmu, who was opposite Xiaohua, seemed to be competing with another VIP on the third floor to raise the price, directly raising the price to a terrifying level. Unfortunately, in the end, young Master Duanmu actually had no choice but to give up when the other party only increased the price by one top-grade primeval stone. This made Xiaohua sigh endlessly. Perhaps the three top-grade primeval stones that Xiaohua used to obstruct him were the last few straws that broke the camel's back. The bidding for the authentic work of great scholar came to an end. The next bidding was still for the items of hidden immortal continent. However, these things were mostly refining techniques of imperial tools. Only some great refiners had use for them. Not only were there few people bidding, even Xiaohua was too lazy to listen. He could be considered to be proficient in the refining techniques of Dao sect and soul cultivators. He also knew a lot of refining techniques of the devil world. Imperial tools, in essence, most of them were derived from Dao sect's tools. Xiaohua could refine spirit tools. Why would he be greedy for the refining techniques of imperial tools? Young Master Fu. Xiaohua raised his hand and took out some spirit fruits from the space. He handed them to Fu Jiwen and said, "Try these spirit fruits, and then continue to analyze the remaining 10 great imperial tools with this Xiao." Okay. Fu Jiwen clapped his hands and took the spirit fruit. He gently took a bite, tasted it, and said, "Can I bring some back?" "Of course you can." Xiaohua nodded his head. However, these spirit fruits are full of heaven and earth primeval qi. People without cultivation are not suitable to eat. This one understands. Fu Jiwen carefully received some and replied, "My wife likes these things, but this one is incompetent and can hardly satisfy her request." "Oh, so it's like that." Xiaohua understood and said enviously, "It's rare for your wife to be so loving. So this Xiao won't help you?" Then, with a wave of Xiaohua's hand, a large pile of spirit fruits appeared on the table as if they didn't cost primeval stones. This is too much." Fu Jiwen was shocked and hurriedly refused. "It's okay, it's just some snacks. Young Master Fu, take it and eat." Xiaohua casually waved his hand. "This Xiao has troubled you for so long. I'm sorry." "All right." Fu Jiwen was really moved in his heart and happily put all the spirit fruits into his small universe bag. Then, he took out a bright red fruit and said while eating, "Ranked above the mysterious demon chess are the tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither. The reason why these two imperial equipment are placed together is because these two imperial equipment were used by the people of the Immortal Palace before the Golden Boy and Jade Girl were conferred into the Immortal Palace. Just now, didn't this one tell fellow Xiao that this music is one of the 5 classics of the Confucian school? And the art of music is also one of the compulsory lessons for students? The tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither are imperial equipment that mainly use sound attacks. Of course, if we were to simply talk about the power of these two imperial equipment, I personally believe that they cannot be compared to the demon and god chess. Perhaps it is because everyone thinks that these two imperial equipment are elegant, so they place them on the demon and god chess. Speaking of the tranquil flute and the heavenly sound zither, naturally, there is a story that everyone knows. Fu Jiwen said again, "In the early years, the Golden Boy and Jade Girl didn't know each other, and they were also enemies. When the two were young, they met in the same academy. It wasn't love at first sight, but after a long time, the two gradually developed feelings for each other. However, when the two were ready to reveal their relationship, they were discovered by their families. The two finally understood that their lovers were enemies, and under the opposition of the two families, the two couldn't get married. Therefore, the two had no choice but to stop their studies and fly away. However, since the seed of love was planted, it was inevitable that it would sprout. When the seed grew into a big tree, the golden boy and jade girl couldn't help but inquire about the other party's situation. When the two found out that the other party had rejected countless marriage proposals, and even jade girl didn't hesitate to fight with her life, the two's hearts suddenly softened. Just when the two were about to get in touch, the war between the two families broke out. The two families fought in a dangerous situation and killed each other. Many of their elders died, and even if the two were in love with each other, they were forced to act against each other's families. At the end of the bloody battle, the two finally met, but the two couldn't bear to kill each other. At the crucial moment, the two stepped into the trap set by the two families in advance and prepared to go to the Yellow Springs together. This trap was set up by taking advantage of the danger of foreign objects. After the two fell into the dangerous situation, everyone thought that the two would die without a doubt. But after they fought a bloody battle for a night, they saw the inside of the dangerous situation shine brightly, and then a wonderful music like the sound of nature came out from inside. That music was like rain, and erased the blood in everyone's heart. That music was like the sound of heaven, and all the dead souls were transcended. In this music, everyone was remorseful, and everyone was reflecting. When the music was over, the two families didn't want to kill each other anymore. They shook hands and made peace, and vowed to be good for their families. When the two families made the vow, the golden boy and jade girl each took the tranquil heart flute and heavenly melody zither and flew out of the dangerous situation. The two were in love, and their love was stronger than gold. In the case of dying for love, the heavens were moved, and they actually obtained 2 imperial equipment in this dangerous situation. It was also these two who relied on these imperial equipment to change the blood feud between the two families. When the two cultivated to the 5-chi unification realm, they received the conferring document from the Immortal Palace and entered the Immortal Palace to serve. Made up. Hearing Fu Jiwen's words, Xiao Hua unrestrainedly asserted, "Not only is this story cliché, it's also full of flaws." Not to mention that when the two met in the academy, they didn't inquire about each other's background, and not to mention that the two were able to walk together in the battle between the two families, and went into the dangerous situation together. Just this imperial equipment, it's impossible to control it right away. The final ending is even more bullshit. I'm afraid that the old woman gave the name of the Immortal Palace to her young granddaughter to make them happy, right? Fu Jiwen shrugged and said with a smile, "Maybe. But this story has been circulating in the hidden Immortal Continent for many years, and no one doubted it. Also, the Tranquil Heart Flute and Heavenly Melody Zither. These 2 imperial equipment are indeed from the Immortal Palace. It said that when the Immortal Palace sent soldiers to capture the demons who didn't submit to the Immortal Palace, someone personally saw the power of these 2 imperial equipment. That's what the Immortal Palace used to trick people, to make people admire the Immortal Palace." Xiao Hua pointed with his hand and said downstairs, "Just like this Yulin Feng, saying so much, isn't it just to make people pay more origin stones?" Haha, Fu Jiwen laughed, because downstairs, Fu Jiwen was bidding for a phoenix tail zither and was exaggerating. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.